Chapter 1566. The Yun Nuo star had imagined the scene after the end of the war, especially this kind of war that was long enough to span eras. Everyone was celebrating, and, at the very least, they had to take a break. Although the Empyrean god of origin was a war race, after fighting for 11 eras, the near-eternal war was finally over. It was only right for them to take a break. Yun Nuoxing thought that the war was a little strange, but he could only blame it on the fact that the suppression effect of the Empyrean god of origin's power was far beyond his imagination. So when he came and reactivated the Temple of Origin, the war became one-sided. Of course, there were also situations where the enemies did not want to fight and wanted to run away. There were also guests trapped in this space. They had wanted to run away for a long time, but they just happened to be finished on the day Yun Nuoxing arrived. In the end, they could not fight and could not run away. The war that lasted for 11 eras was a little funny in Yun Nuoxing's eyes. The enemies were very strong, and the effect of suppressing them was also very strong. The enemies retreated, the enemies tenaciously defended, and he rushed forward. He traded his life for theirs, and he ended the war. In the eyes of Jing Nuoxing and the others, it was a plot kill. It was more or less funny. The existence of the origin energy gave him a strong suppressive effect on non-order life forms and non-order powers. Even the abyssal death shroud would be cut by the origin energy. So until now, he had not experienced the feeling of being suppressed when facing non-order enemies, except for the abyssal death shroud. Back to the original topic. Yun Nuoxing originally thought that he would see a lively and celebratory scene when he left the origin shrine. His head was full of fantasy, but when he came out, a large group of buildings with the origin shrine as the center was lively. It was indeed lively, but it was different from what he had imagined. People came and went, busy in the buildings, busy in the starry sky, imprinting power in the space and the void. Among the loud shouts, words such as void, portal, space stabilization, and demolition were mixed in. Combined with the surging energy in this space, Yun Nuoxing roughly understood what they were doing. Although it was lively, it was not a festive bustle. It turned out that they were still in the stage of cleaning up after the battle. They were busy preparing to pack up the entire space that was enveloped by the theoretical barrier, and it had been some time since then. The distant stars appeared to be folding. This world that had expanded for 11 eras was slowly reclaiming its territory. The things that others had set up in the stars were stabilizing this space, methodically dealing with the various situations caused by the shrinking of space. Yun Nuoxing found Jing Yun and the others in the distance and casually hopped over to them. The former stopped talking when she felt the movement beside her and turned to look at him. "Yo, you're awake?" Jing Yun raised her hand to greet him. Her eyes scanned Yun Nuoxing from head to toe, using her gaze to check his condition. After a moment, she suddenly joked, using the origin energy to deal with the things created by the heavenly god of origin and the others. Only you could think of something like that. That energy blast almost pressed this space into the void. Yun Nuoxing was immediately speechless when he was stuffed in his mouth after being teleported out. After stuttering for a long time, he could only smile bitterly. That was because the situation was urgent. I didn't want to wait for them to run away, only to come out of nowhere from the void and wreak havoc on the world of order. So, as for the outcome, I only heard the gist of it. I didn't fully understand. The outcome was just like that. You blew up the crack in the primordial realm, and the blast of the origin energy wiped out most of the enemies. The rest were all purified by us using the origin shrine. Jing Yun shrugged. In short, after the plot was killed, the ones who deserved to die were all dead, while the ones who didn't deserve to die were still standing. Due to the sealed space, the large group of reciprocity cultivators did not destroy the space of order, even though they were engaged in a fierce battle. The events of 11 eras had become a memory. Apart from that, it seemed like nothing had happened. There are still many changes. Jing Yun stretched her hands and let out a long sigh. 11 eras have passed in the end. Everything that once existed in this world no longer exists. The environment of the early battles has become what you call war ruins. It has become a remnant engraved by the fragments of laws and the power of loss. Everything that was glorious and magnificent in the past has vanished with the war. Only the origin shrine remains. Apart from the shrine, we have nothing left. Nothing. Yin Nuashing fell silent when he heard that. It was as if the battle had been dragged out on purpose. If it could be dragged out, it would be dragged out. It had been dragged out until today, waiting for him to come here. Then, it had quickly ended the battle and told him bits and pieces about that era. It seemed to be the meaning of these war ruins, of space. So, the energy that leaked out from this sealed space reshaped the space outside. Yin Nuashing mumbled to himself. It was a far-fetched explanation. However, this was the only explanation. The barrier was an incomplete barrier after all. It could not reach its theoretical level. It could probably only freeze this part of the starry sky. The state of the space on the surface was actually to seal the deeper space. Even so, the commotion caused by the battle between the primeval heavenly gods and the non-order forces still reached the surface of the space. That was why Yin Nuashing came here. The energy that leaked into the surface of the space had reshaped the starry sky outside. That was probably the main reason why they felt that the starry sky was slightly abnormal in its normal state. Looking into the distance, Yin Nuashing noticed the signs of space folding and collapsing. He slowly came back to his senses. Do you have any plans after this? Plans, huh? Jingyun's facial muscles twitched slightly when he heard that. His eyes flashed with a strange light. We have never thought about that. The battle that we thought would last forever had inadvertently ended because of your arrival. We had never thought of such a situation. For 11 eras, there was nothing but battle. Although we had thought of the day when the battle would end, when it really ended, we suddenly realized that there was nothing left to do. Yin Nuashing nodded to show that he understood. They thought that the battle would last forever until the end of the Grand Yuan realm. But it had ended inadvertently. Other than relieving themselves of the heavy responsibility, perhaps there was also a sense of confusion. The era that we existed in has passed. We're just the survivors of that era. The things that we held on to, the things that we imagined and cherished in our hearts, may have disappeared in the long river of time. It is difficult to find them. All that is left of us is everything in this starry sky. Jing Yin let out a long sigh and turned to look at Yin Nuashing. For the time being, I have not thought of anything to do. I can see that you seem to have something to say, but they seem to be waiting for you to speak. Why don't you speak now? Yin Nuashing turned his head and glanced at Jing Yuanji and the others. When he saw their chuckling expressions, he couldn't help but roll his eyes. Why did he have to say it personally? It wasn't such a high-class thing. After organizing his words, Yin Nuashing told Jing Yin everything that happened in the world of order in one breath. He directly threw a paragraph of information to Jing Yun, allowing him to read it slowly. After his expression changed a few times, he felt that Jing Yun had read enough. Only then did Yin Nuashing speak. So, the world of order is also a mess now. We are gathering power in the void. My original intention was to pack up your entire land and throw it to the front line of the void. However, I still need to ask for your opinion. After all, we have already said that we don't want to fight the entire world of order. We can't possibly go back on our words halfway through the war. That would be a little demeaning. Anyway, while you guys are done with the war, I started to make plans for you guys. After all, the matter here has already ended. All right then, let's go to the void front line. We have nothing to do now anyway. Jingyan suddenly opened her mouth and happily agreed, making Yin Nuashing slightly stunned. This kind of straightforwardness was a little beyond his imagination. The matter here is also over. Pack up, and we can return to the world of order. Jingyan saw that he was stunned for a moment and felt that his reaction was a little funny. She laughed a few times and patted his shoulder. We're just a group of wandering ghosts. We will go wherever we go. We have followed the realm of gods and fought alongside the primordial heavenly god and the others to guard the void of order. Although many things have been affected by the tides of chaos and have become blurry, there are still some impressions and memories that have not been washed away. I vaguely remember that we have spent our lives in battle. It's nothing more than fighting wherever we go. But no matter how we fight, We can't avoid the saying for the sake of the world of order. Our era also has its own troubles. Now that there are troubles in the world of order. Then let's go and greet them. Anyway, I heard you guys say that now is not the time to start a war. We can rest for 2 days. Yin Nuashin grinned. So casual. Won't they get tired of war after fighting for 11 eras? Let the people of the mythological era fight with the underworld that was passed down from the mythological era. It sounds very funny. Yin Nuashin was stunned for a moment and subconsciously said, "Do you guys still remember the underworld? It's the associated realm of the realm of gods." Jingyan looked up with a thoughtful expression. "All right. I heard you guys say that the underworld that is causing trouble in the world of order is the underworld, right? I don't particularly remember the details. I only remember that the underworld seemed to have followed the realm of gods to war in the void. Because it was a world that was attached to the realm of gods, it was also given the name realm. Following the realm of gods to war, but not following the heavenly god of origin to war?" Yin Nuashing asked. The heavenly god of origin and the others did not come out for a long time. They rarely managed the affairs of the world of order. It was the people of the realm of gods who helped to manage it. The underworld. I remember that the realm of gods did have a few associated realms in the beginning. It was said that when the heavenly god of origin and the others created the realm of gods, they did not calculate the size of the realm of gods properly. They cut the part that was larger than they expected. That seems to be the case. Jingyan kept knocking her head as she said this. Seeing that someone was walking quickly from the side, she suddenly raised her hand. "Buddy, come over here. I have something to ask you. Do you guys still remember the incident between the realm of gods and the underworld?" Yin Nuashing and the others turned their heads. It was the red-haired uncle and the green-robed young man. They had just finished their business somewhere else when they were caught by Jingyan. The realm of gods and the underworld. The red-haired uncle stroked his short beard and muttered, "I don't remember the details. I stayed in the realm of gods for a while." Well, the realm of gods and the underworld were originally one. In fact, the beings that existed in the underworld later on were also people from the realm of gods. The group of people who experienced the long period of development in the early days were the first natives of the underworld. In the beginning, the two realms floated directly on the surface space. Later on, the underworld slipped into the deeper space. However, they were still beside the realm of gods. That's all I remember. Why did you suddenly ask this question? Here, take a look at this, and you'll understand. Jing Yin passed the information she obtained from Yin Nuashing to the two of them. Yin Nuashing and the others had a strange expression when they heard it. The people of the underworld were originally people from the realm of gods. It sounded a little frightening. So, it was another large-scale civil war in the realm of gods? Moreover, this trivial matter had now developed to the point of conquering the entire 8 elements realm. The rhythm was very confusing. Only God knew how many words had been omitted in the middle. Although they were originally in the same realm, they had been separated for too long. A river rushing down from a mountain could split a mortal village into the West Village and the East Village, let alone a realm that was separated. Jingyin could tell what they were thinking from their frowns. She waved her hand and said, "What's more, the underworld later slipped into another space and disappeared. Although they still maintained contact with the realm of gods, no one knows the details. But for all these years, the ancient imperial world and the realm of gods were doing well. Why did the underworld leave? And come back to..." See, you couldn't help but mutter. Hearing the little girl's mutter, Yin Nuashing's expression became even more strange. Dozens of eras, no, less than 10 eras, the realm of gods became the enemy of the ancient imperial world. As early as the 61st era, when he arrived as the quarter moon, he knew that the realm of gods and the demon world were at war. God knew what kind of entanglement there was. He was also very curious. What kind of big matter could make the two realms, who were as close as family, fight to the death? If he knew, what could he do if he knew? Could he go back to the 139th era to mediate the war there? The probability was not high, but he could try. Now is not the time to talk about it. It's hard to say. It's hard to say. After reading the information, the red-haired man sighed and shook his head. He didn't know why things had turned out this way. He saw the green-robed young man in deep thought and said, Do you remember anything? A little. The green-robed young man frowned and suddenly looked up at the starry sky. I remember that it was before we went to war. I suddenly received a message from the realm of gods. I can't remember the details. Bah, damn the tide of chaos. The red-haired man cursed and poked the young man's arm with his elbow. Just tell me what you remember. The underworld rebelled and fled without fighting. Be prepared to deal with it and avoid being attacked from both sides. The atmosphere suddenly became silent. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched for a while. He didn't know what kind of mood he was in, but he slowly said, Before the war, you mean 11 years ago? The green-robed young man shook his head. Yes, it was earlier. 30, 37, or 38. The end of the 38th era, the beginning of the 39th era, the beginning of the War of Gods. Jing Yin crossed her arms and frowned as she tried to recall. I can't remember the initial reason, but I know that it definitely had something to do with the chaos plane. The underworld's defection only accelerated the development of the war. At first, it seemed that it was just the realm of gods and some places in the upper planes. The green-robed young man patted his sleeves and said slowly, I don't know what happened, but as the war went on, it dragged the entire realm of order into a quagmire. In the end, even the origin heavenly god was alarmed. Not a few thousand years after they appeared, the war developed to the most serious situation. At that time, the entire 8-elemental realm was in an abyss of suffering. That's the general situation. We have forgotten a lot of details, but we definitely won't forget the general situation. A war that could attract the attention of the origin heavenly god could only be a war involving order. At that time, something big must have happened that involved the 8-elemental realm or the entire Yuan realm. Ah, that distant history. Speaking of it, it was actually a bunch of messy events that were put together. The initiators, controllers, and participants of the messy events were all a bunch of terrible people. Therefore, the development of the entire event was particularly terrible. In short, only 1/10 of the cause and effect of that divine war was known. Nothing else was known, and there was still a need for further exploration. The group stood in place and watched the space shrink. Yin Nuoxing suddenly said, By the way, in the age of mythology, in your era, did the realm of gods have the Observer and Guardian? Observer and Guardian. Never heard of them. The red-haired man shook his head. Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. It seemed like it was not what he thought. He did not have to continue investigating. However, there was an origin shrine, a name given by the heavenly gods of origin. It had the same name as the origin shrine that was spread throughout the void. Even the appearance of the shrine was the same, but it was grander and more sacred. If I really had to describe it, the heavenly gods of Origin's headquarters was an existence similar to the main shrine. It was responsible for managing the affairs of the world of order, so the people of the heavenly gods of Origin were very busy at that time. Their footprints could be found all over the void. I remember that there was a person in charge of the main shrine. Yin Nuoxing sucked in a breath of cold air. So he still had to investigate? Let him go. He couldn't really be related to the Origin Shrine, right? What was it this time? The Shrine Master of the Origin Shrine? Or some random person? Looking at how he had been working for the realm of gods for dozens of eras, it was probably one of the most difficult jobs. Oh, right. I just remembered something important. Yin Nuoxing patted his head, and 3 glowing souls came out from his spiritual world. They should be your people, right? I picked them up in the previous space, but there's only 1 soul left. I'll return them to you. Yin Nuoxing nodded, and 3 glowing souls came out from his spiritual world. They should be your people, right? I picked them up in the previous space, but there's only 1 soul left. The soul of the short-haired youth came out and looked at the starry sky. His expression was slightly startled, as if he was thinking about something. The other 2 also looked like they were thinking about something, as if they were about to remember something. Oh, it's you. The red-haired uncle jumped up in surprise. He rushed 2 steps forward and pressed on the shoulder of the short-haired youth. Excitement gushed out from the bottom of his heart. Who are you? Everyone. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks reddened. Was this uncle trying to be funny? Ahem, I still remember you, but I forgot your names. The red-haired uncle blushed and laughed awkwardly. Origin above. We don't even remember who we are. The short-haired youth spread his hands helplessly. The doubts and thoughts in his eyes faded. It seemed that he still could not remember anything. He looked at the red-haired uncle, his eyes flashing. But I feel that you are a little familiar. I can feel a little connection. Yin Nuoxing, anyway, he did not recognize the wrong people. He waved his hand. Well, if there's nothing else, you can take them away. My task is done. It is better to leave them to you. At first, he was worried that he would not recognize any of the 3 people he took out from his soul. He did not expect to meet acquaintances as soon as he came out. The other 2 did not have much of an impression of Jingyun and the others. However, they had a little reaction when they saw the Temple of Origins. Although they had forgotten about the grand and sacred temple, their expressions subconsciously became solemn the moment they saw it. The feeling that was deeply engraved in the soul would not fade so easily. I didn't expect you to find our compatriots in this space. Looking at the 3 souls leaving with the red-haired uncle and the short-haired youth, Jingyun took a deep breath and smiled at Yin Nuoxing. Thank you in advance. Oh, it was convenient. Yin Nuoxing shook his head and lowered his head. Well, there's one more thing. Jingyun looked at him, and her eyes gradually became a little deep. You want to talk about the non-order power in you? Yin Nuoxing nodded. Every injustice has its perpetrator, and every debt has its debtor. Those who have experienced the war of the mythological era should have some impression of this force. The force that killed the god of origin should have appeared elsewhere. Chapter 1567. The annihilation energy that stood at the pinnacle of the chaos plane and the demonic shadow were all things from the mythological era. Traces of that era had either disappeared or been hidden. It was unrealistic for him to find too many traces during the Dark Age. Now that he had met Jingyun and the others who also came from the mythological era, if he did not ask now, when would he? That is, he could only hope that the tide of chaos did not erase that part of his memories. Otherwise, he would really have no place to cry. The energy that originated from chaos stood at the pinnacle. It was almost the same level of energy as the heavenly god of origin and the others. As Jingyun muttered those words, Yin Nuoxing and the others felt that they had a chance. They held their breaths and looked at Jingyun nervously. He paced back and forth in thought for a while before he looked up at Yin Nuoxing and slowly spoke. They even held their heartbeats. That's it. Everyone. Huh? Yin Nuoxing spat out a mouthful of energy and was speechless. You put on such a serious face just to say those 2 words. Jingyun smiled and rubbed his face. I really don't remember. Damn the tide of chaos. He sighed and slowly walked towards the space outside the buildings with his hands behind his back. That must be something quite important, but not in the ordinary sense. Although I don't know where this energy of yours comes from, it is quite dangerous. The reason I still have a little impression of it is probably because I had fought against the wielder of this energy. Or maybe I just saw it from afar. I don't remember any more details and probably can't get it back. Yin Nuoxing let out a long sigh. As expected, it was not so easy to find out about the lousy things of that era. He just let the energy stay in his body. He felt terrified, but could not do anything about it, just like how he could not do anything about the origin energy. Fortunately, he had more than 100 types of origin energy in his body. Even if the annihilation energy suddenly went on a rampage, they would be able to suppress it. Jingyun looked at his face that flickered and changed dozens of times in an instant. He thought for a while and said, there may still be traces of that energy left in various parts of the void. That divine war back then completely involved the 2 planes of order. It was the most intense battle between order and chaos in dozens of eras. Your energy in the plane of chaos is about the same as the heavenly god of origin in the plane of order. If that is the case, they should have also appeared in that war. Yin Nuoxing pondered for a moment. Nuoxing looked at him and said, if I tell you that this energy directly killed the heavenly god of origin and the others, Jingyun said, then that would be a little scary. The air was silent for a while. The group stood not far away from the buildings and stared at the starry sky, shrinking bit by bit. When a starry sky shrank to the size of a normal world, it gradually stopped. Yin Nuashing also came back to his senses. He waved his hand and said, "Forget it. Let's not think about those things for now." I already knew that that era had completely disappeared, but I still fearlessly pursued it. Naturally, I did not think that I would be able to uncover the dusty history immediately. Step by step, there will always be some traces hidden in the void that I can find. I'm not in a hurry at all, so let's not talk about those things for now. Then there was nothing to talk about. They had been standing here talking for dozens of minutes. If the starry sky had not shrunk, they would have already run away. Because they had to bring the starry sky to the front line of the void, and they did not even know how to get back. They could only wrap up this world, including the theoretical barrier, and bring it away. As for them, they still had to continue heading deeper into the ruins of the war. They had not reached the end yet. Is this the starry sky outside? I haven't come out to see it since the war back then. It doesn't seem to have changed much. Jing Yun left the starry sky with Yin Nuashing and the others. The space was taken away by the former in her pocket. The red-haired uncle and the green-robed youth were busy building the infrastructure inside. They couldn't possibly keep guarding the empty starry sky and the buildings. Since the war had ended, they naturally needed to reorganize the world. What they were experiencing now was the most earth-shattering time in the 11 eras other than the war. The long war years had finally passed. Then, they were about to enter the next war era. Yin Nuashing felt that he might faint if he were to experience it again. Apart from a new war that was about to come, there were still things that needed to be taken care of. First, they had to repair the space that had been contaminated by the chaotic energy, clean up all the distortions left behind by the chaotic energy in the starry sky, and tidy up the world that had become terrible. Yin Nuashing felt that he did not have to deal with these things himself. The primeval heavenly gods knew what to do at this time better than he did. He just had to wait. Is this the fourth rank that you guys are talking about? Jing Yun could not help but ask as she felt the order of the starry sky outside. Yin Nuashing said, "Yes, the mythological era. What did you guys call the fourth rank back then?" Jing Yun shook her head. There is no such thing as a fourth rank in our era, nor was there such a thing as a third rank, which is a neutral order. There were only order and non-order. The things that you guys are talking about are all new to us. Back then, it was also because we felt that something was wrong with the order that we used that layer of barrier to separate the inside from the outside. Not long after that, the chaos tide came. Sigh, that theoretical barrier is only a theory after all. If the primeval heavenly god and the others were to cast it, even if the chaos tide was 100 times stronger, it would still be able to stop it. There was no such thing as a fourth rank. Yin Nuashing tugged at his long hair and pondered for a while. It was both unexpected and expected. The third and fourth ranks were not serious orders in the first place. It seemed that it was also because of some changes in the void after the primeval heavenly god and the others died that led to the emergence of the other two orders. It seemed that the illusory void vortex should have nothing to do with the mythological era. At most, it should be something that happened in the Dark Age. Only God knew what he had just thought of. Just now, when her consciousness drifted out, she saw an unusual space. Yin Nuashing felt that if they continued to go deeper, there might be more danger. So, she first put Siyu and the other girls away, then threw Gu Zhongming and the others into the starry sky, just now, leaving Jing Yuanji and Min by her side. After that, the four of them bravely ventured into the war ruins. However, Yin Nuashing felt that for Jing Yun, it should be a revisit of an old place. She just did not know what he would think when he saw these worlds that were only wreckage left, or even wreckage that had been reconstructed from rule fragments. He probably would not think much of it. After all, he was the primeval heavenly god. He had lived for dozens of eras, and his spirit was as tough as anything. Along the way, he did not show any sentimental expression. Yin Nuashing looked at the starry sky and felt that she had found the reason. Who would show sentimental emotions in front of a battlefield? By the way, It was Jing Yun who was now leading the way. This large space was the battlefront that we guarded back then. If I'm not mistaken, the war ruins that you know should be the wreckage of the war zone. I remember that there should be at least 30,000 worlds stationed here, but in the end, they were all burned up as fireworks in the void. Yin Nuoxing waved her hand. According to my observation and calculation, this space of ruins is not as big as 30,000 worlds. Perhaps many were burned up, and after the end of the war, some of the remaining wreckage may have been involved in the conflict of order and became raw materials. Then, a part of it was destroyed by the void. Most of it was all left here and not cleaned up by the void. That's normal, but Jingyan looked around and could not help but frown slightly. There are many precipitated shadows. How do these things survive? Is it because of what you said, because of the death of the primeval heavenly god? Shadows. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. She thought for a moment and seemed to understand. Are you talking about the shadows of order and the sins of order? The two exchanged information for a long time before they confirmed that the shadows that Jing Yun mentioned were the shadows of order that Yin Nuoxing knew. The latter nodded. I got this information from a very reliable person. She has also lived since the mythological era. She observed this void with her own eyes and saw it change little by little after the death of the primeval heavenly god. Since the death of the primeval heavenly god, this void has been changing all the time, and it is not a good change for the world of order. Jing Yin frowned. Did the world of order not encounter any attacks from chaos? Although I don't know what attacks from chaos you're talking about, but the void of chaos has been very quiet. Nothing happened at all. The power of chaos rarely appears in the world of order. No? Jing Yin pondered. Her gaze seemed to have penetrated the starry sky and saw the situation on the other side of the void. After the fall of the primeval heavenly god, did they disappear as well? Or did they just go into hibernation? He did not remember what they were. He only remembered that there were some special existences that belonged to non-order. They were quite troublesome existences for the world of order. Jing Yun tilted her head and glanced at Yin Nuoxing, who was talking to Jing Yuanji. Jing Yun shook her head and decided not to ask. It was useless to ask about those things, and there wouldn't be any changes. Since they didn't appear, there should be some problems. It was not easy to wander around in a world that had already been destroyed and look for traces that had disappeared and been recreated. Moreover, the memories of those traces only existed in a vague memory, so the difficulty was even greater. Jing Yun wandered around the starry sky for an hour until Yin Nuoxing could not help but propose a proposal to cut a hole in the space barrier. Only then did they find the teleportation point to another space before he ran out of patience. However, the teleportation point shocked Yin Nuoxing and the others a little. A platform appeared in the starry sky. Yin Nuoxing and the others stood on the gray-white platform and looked at the hundreds of huge stone soldiers standing around the platform. There was also a huge stone statue sitting on the throne in the center. For a moment, they were a little stunned. She pointed at the stone statue and asked, "You call this thing a teleportation point?" "Yes." Jingyan did not find anything wrong with it and nodded. Every teleportation point is a pass guarded by a large amount of power. They're stacked on top of each other and were set up to resist the power of chaos back then. Huh. Yin Nuoxing raised her head stiffly. A pass was guarded by a stone statue of the primeval realm. This scale was 2. However, when she thought of the power of the primeval god in the previous era, she suddenly felt that there was nothing strange about it. A primeval god and hundreds of stone statues at the peak of origin was just a piece of cake. Back then, when she heard what the short-haired man said, she thought that it was only used to go to a special place. It seemed that they had remembered wrongly and pieced it together with other strange memory fragments. It seems that this place has also been affected by the tide of chaos. The energy of these stone statues is almost exhausted. Jing Yun walked straight to the stone statue in the center. This time, there was no pressure from the primeval chi, nor was there any earth-shattering phenomenon. Yin Nuoxing's face stiffened. What level were they originally? Let me think. They were probably guarded by a mid-level primeval and a beginner primeval. Yin Nuoxing, Uh-huh. If he had encountered something of that level, it would not have been as simple as tearing apart a piece of the void. If he did not forcibly activate all the power of origin, he might not even be able to escape. Jing Yun saw that his expression was so stiff that it was almost cramping. She suddenly thought of something and couldn't help but laugh. You didn't fight with them, did you? Seeing Yun Nuoxing nodding, Jing Yun finally could not help but laugh. You're really something. Ahem, let's not talk about this. Use the power of origin to open the gate. Do you want the power of origin? Yun Nuoxing was stunned. He subconsciously took out the origin energy and injected it into the stone statue of the Yuanshe realm. The latter's hands, which had accumulated dust for countless years on the armrest, slowly lifted up with a rumbling sound. He clasped his hands in front of him, and a portal slowly appeared between his palms. It's true. Back then, when I was fighting, I suddenly stopped fighting and made the door appear probably because you used the power of origin and it received it. So, they stopped fighting and opened the gate. Jing Yun led the way and explained, the gate can only be opened with the power of the primordial god. Those of us guarding the gate would more or less carry the power of the primordial god, which is why we're not restricted from entering and exiting. But the others would not be able to. Sigh. In the past, these statues still had sentience. But now, they have truly become wooden statues. Those superfluous things have all been taken away by the tides of chaos. The group passed through the dimensional portal and arrived at another part of the starry sky. They sensed a stronger fourth-rank aura and a calmer state. They deduced that they were probably approaching the center of the war ruins. Jing Yun did not feel any familiarity with this space that had undergone 40, 50, or 60 changes. The only thing that allowed him to determine that this was still the same battlefield were the dimensional portals hidden in the void, as well as the fourth-rank aura that permeated the entire space. The teleportation points hidden in this part of the galaxy were quickly found. It did not take much effort to open the dimensional portal to go deeper. The group quickly went through the war ruins. The deeper they went, the weaker the aura of order conflict in the space. However, the space itself was becoming more and more grotesque and distorted. Many black spots gradually appeared in the galaxy, like a mosaic pasted on a few stars, making the stars look like they had been swallowed by some indescribable thing. There were also many broken buildings and broken planets floating in the galaxy. They had become carriers of order and were still absorbing the energy around them, as if they were accumulating energy for the upcoming battle. For some reason, the space that was leaning toward a state of pseudo-peace would one day break the peace and become chaotic, becoming the same as the few layers of space outside. At this point, Yun Nuoxing could no longer tell how the Fourth Order area had evolved. The place close to where the Fourth Order first appeared was strangely calm, pseudo-peace. It was probably because the changes had not started yet. The Fourth Order had just occupied the place and was ready to fight with the local order. The further they went, the more they were in the state of fighting. The outermost area was the state where the fight had ended and the other orders had been thrown into the void. That was where the real peace was. This feeling of XX did not seem to make sense. Forget it. After dozens of eras, he had not figured out the Fourth Order anyway. He would just treat it as a novelty and remember it. After all, the void was never short of novelties like this. After passing through more than 10 dimensions in succession, the state of the galaxy in front of them became more distorted. The strong and unstable Fourth Order aura rushed toward them, forcing Yun Nuoxing to erect a barrier specifically to deal with this order in order to continue leading them forward. Indeed, we can still find traces of the line of defense that was built back then in some places, but most of them are just wreckage. We can't find the wreckage of the other origin temples. This shouldn't be. Jing Yun could not help muttering after leading them through several dimensions in succession. Are there other origin temples that act as nodes in this area? Yun Nuoxing asked curiously. Jing Yun nodded. A line of defense made up of 30,000 worlds would require at least 15 origin temples to coordinate the defense of the entire line of defense with the function of nodes. However, We haven't found the wreckage of the other origin temples until now. I don't know if they've all been destroyed. Why are you looking for the wreckage? To see if I can find the heavenly origin god's backup plan left behind in the temple's core. Jing Yun's eyes flickered, but she looked at Yin Nuoxing, causing his heart to skip a beat. I think those things should be of great help to you. Stop. Stop. I'm not listening. Your idea is very dangerous. Yin Nuoxing leaped back a few hundred meters and pointed a finger at Jing Yun as he yelled, I'm telling you, I'll never touch those strange things again. Every time I touch them, it's extremely torturous. Jing Yun said seriously, perhaps I can figure out how to help you reach the primeval stage. After all, you're the successor of the heavenly origin god and the others. Perhaps you'll have a unique path. Can I know what kind of special reaction those temples will have after they've been destroyed? Jing Yuanji and Minyu did not know whether to laugh or cry. In the end, this guy immediately gave in after hearing about the primeval stage. Jing Yun crossed her arms and looked at him with a smile, as if her evil plan had succeeded. If you use the origin energy to sense, perhaps it's useless. After I found out that this place is also related to the heavenly origin god, the origin energy's senses have never stopped. I've been scanning the barren void for most of the day, but I haven't sensed anything. Yin Nuoxing knew what he was going to say even before he finished listening. He shook his head and sighed. The only thing I can sense is in front, very far ahead, but it's very blurry. Well, if that's the case, there might be 1 or 2 origin temples left in the space inside, Jing Yun responded. After thinking for a while, she waved her hand. Let's go. We'll know when we continue walking in. They stopped where they were for a while and started on their way again. However, this time, Yin Nuoxing took the initiative to slow down a little. He tried to release his origin energy and God Soul's power as far as possible, searching every inch of space and void along the way. However, there was no result. After they continued to cross 4 or 5 spaces, Yin Nuoxing was muttering to himself. When he stepped out of the portal, he suddenly felt that the 4th rank was extremely calm. Jing Yuanji and the others also felt it. They were all stunned. Even the sequence barrier retracted when it sensed that there was no need to protect them. Yin Nuoxing raised his head and looked at the starry sky before him. Billions of stars were shining brightly. The flickering spots and black shadows in the starry sky looked a little familiar. Chapter 1568. The dark starry sky flickered with the bright light of countless nebulae and star clusters. Countless black stripes and some shining spots looked like stars in the distant starry sky, magnified by hundreds of thousands of times. One could directly observe the extent of the light. However, one could only see the cross shape of the light. There were even more strange, three-dimensional shapes. Only the star itself could not be seen. Countless spots of light and black shadows floated in the starry sky, dancing with the starlight. They were as numerous as the sand in the sea of stars. The originally spacious starry sky was filled with these things, to the point that it was a little crowded. This place. Yin Nuoxing looked at the starry sky and suddenly frowned. Why did this place feel so familiar? This seems to be the place where my consciousness floated to when I fainted. As he spoke, he tried to activate the consciousness imprint. However, after trying for a long time, no response was transmitted to his mind. The imprint was silently destroyed in the starry sky. Probably because he was only a consciousness when he came here, it was quickly destroyed when he returned. Jing Yun looked at the strange things floating in the starry sky and rubbed her chin. I don't have any impression of this place. In my memory, we didn't encounter these things when we were guarding this place. Neither side did. You don't have many memories left. Yin Nuoxing shrugged in response. Then he looked at the starry sky. After looking around, his eyes stopped at a spot that was abnormally dark, as if there was not a single speck of starlight in it. But I still remember a little bit of this place. The origin energy is also moving. As he spoke, he could not help but be stunned for a moment. His cheeks trembled. The origin energy was moving a little, and it was pointing to the place where he saw a complete rhombus-shaped thing. It was most likely related to the origin heavenly god. God knows what he saw. When he thought of this, he actually had the irresistible thought of retreating. However, before he could turn around, he caught a glimpse of Jingyun, who was still in deep thought. He hesitated for a moment, and then he walked out of the starry sky, one step at a time. Sigh, forget it. Let's go. The little angels did not know whether to laugh or cry when they heard this. This guy was really afraid of the origin heavenly god. Mainly, he was afraid of the things they left behind. Yuan Kong was not particularly clear about this. He could not help but mutter, "Why does the big idiot change his expression when talking about origin? Doesn't he like the origin energy in his body? I don't understand." The relationship between passivity and initiative. See Yu Kong Ching Huang's elegant black hair with her slender fingers and sighed casually. Talk about the change in mentality before and after forcing yourself on him and going with the flow. Feng Qing Wang. Don't talk nonsense. You're teaching Yuan Kong bad things. Something like that, something like that. Siyu smiled and waved her hand. The little angels also took the time to respond to this topic. Little Star is indeed unlucky when he encounters the origin heavenly god. I don't know if it's because of the unknown reaction of the origin heavenly god, or if it's because he's suppressed by the origin heavenly god. After hearing the entire conversation of these girls, Yin Oxing ground his teeth so hard that 2 blue veins popped out on his forehead. He was sure that those girls in his soul had sensed the fluctuation of his mind, but they pretended not to see it and continued to talk. The more they talked, the more excited they became. What did they think of him as the master of the family, the master of the soul world? However, once those girls started chatting with him as the main topic, there was no end to it. The time span spanned across several eras, and every time they would look at him with some strange eyes, which made his scalp go numb. At the same time, he also felt an inexplicable numbness in his knees. It was really exhausting. Leaving aside the girls who were talking more and more excitedly in his soul, Yin Oxing opened the soul shield to calm his mind. He led Jing Yuanji and the others across the last distance of the starry sky and arrived at the last place his consciousness had been before it dissipated. It's probably here. Let me see. He compared the surroundings. Other than the 3-dimensional light spots and black shadows that should only appear inside and around the white hole, there was nothing different in the starry sky. He was sure that this was the place. Although I think you have forgotten everything, I still want to ask. Look at that thing in front of you. Do you remember it? Yin Nuoxing glanced at Jing Yun and pointed a finger forward. The 3 of them looked forward, and their gazes gradually deepened. 100,000 miles in front of them, in the dark starry sky, there was an area that was releasing arc-shaped lightning energy. It marked out an area with a radius of about 100 meters. Inside the area, there was a circle of transparent white energy that flickered on the left and right. It was the second area that belonged to that area. Then, in the center of the transparent ring, in the pure darkness, there was a neat diamond-shaped object that was pointing outwards and rotating slowly with itself as its axis. What is that thing? Such chaotic energy. It is as if all the energy and order in this world and this void have been mixed together, and then mixed with countless broken mixtures to create it. Jing Yun and Jing Yuanji looked at the flickering dark area, and their gazes became solemn. Jing Yun pondered for a moment and said, "But it seems to have the energy aura of the primordial god and the others. It is very thick and is not any weaker than when they came in person. I have seen it before, so I can be sure. I'm very sorry. I suddenly remembered that my stomach hurts a little. Let me find a place to relieve it first. UNG, let go of me. Don't pull me. Save me. You're insane. You're heartless. You're forcing a good woman into prostitution. Whoa. Jing Yuanji quickly grabbed Lord Feng, who was about to leave when he heard the primordial god turn around. She pressed her lily-white hand on his mouth, cutting off his desperate howls that sounded like he was about to be raped. Then, she quickly dragged him toward the black hole. Jing Yun and Min looked at each other, sighed helplessly, and hurriedly followed. The transparent white energy ring kept flashing, releasing arcs of energy lightning from the outer ring. The lightning bolts crookedly rushed outside, and after rushing out for about 100 meters, they seemed to have encountered another layer of barrier. They struck that limit, causing the 100-meter ring to flicker faintly. That was the maximum distance that could be defined. If this pure black thing did not emit any light or energy, Yin Nuoxing and the others would not be able to find it even if they searched for a long time. This thing was really too inconspicuous. Assuming that the maximum distance was a sphere with a radius of 100 meters. It could also be a flat surface. In this creation that spanned tens of thousands of kilometers across the starry sky, it was only slightly bigger than a normal human, relatively speaking. Since it was a creation of this world, or at least it existed here, Jingyan went up and circled the ball a few times. However, she did not find anything. Although it was called a ball, the arcs of energy lightning did cover the position of a sphere. However, the darkness at the center was only a flat surface. After circling to the back, Jingyan could not see the thing at the center, which only revealed half of its tip. He stretched out his hand to test it a few times. His palm easily passed through the 100-meter boundary and could directly touch the arcs of energy. He did feel like he was being electrocuted. There was no danger, but it felt a little strange. Jingyan suddenly jolted as if she had thought of something. However, a confused expression appeared on her face again. I seem to remember this, but I'm not too sure. Yin Nuoxing. Woo-woo-woo. He raised his head and rolled his eyes at Jing Yuanji, who was still covering his mouth. The latter laughed dryly and took her hand away with a red face. Phew! Is it something related to the primordial god? Yin Nuoxing breathed a sigh of relief. He was almost choked to death by the girl. It seems to be a space. Yin Nuoxing muttered inexplicably when he heard that. After a while, he spread out one of his hands and said, Well, is it going to the next deeper space passage? Anyway, we have been running around here all this time. It doesn't matter if we have a few more spaces. Isn't it? Jingyan shook her head. It is probably a special space. There's a very rich origin energy coming from it. It might even be left behind by the primordial god. But I don't know why it has drifted to this place. I don't remember seeing this thing. But according to some details I know and the layout I know, this is indeed a space. After saying this, Yin Nuoxing and the other two instantly fell silent. Yin Nuoxing was even more shocked by his own thoughts. A space filled with a huge amount of origin energy, and it was hiding in a corner of the void. Oh my God, could it be that someone was hiding in here right now? If they rushed in, would they be killed by the primordial god, who woke up in a fit of anger? I'll go explore first. You guys come back later. While Yin Nuoxing was still hesitating, Jing Yin Nuoxing plunged into the center of the deep cave. By the time he reacted, half of his body had already drilled into the flat surface of the cave. Yin Nuoxing was scared half to death. He could not help but gulp as he watched his feet disappear. The waiting time was quite long. Yin Nuoxing felt that he was sweating. He had never felt so nervous before. He also did not understand why he would lose his composure when it came to the primordial god. It was probably a natural feeling of restraint. It felt as long as an era. In fact, only a minute had passed, and Yin Nuoxing could not help but want to pull his people back. Just as he decided to attack the cave and the diamond-shaped cave, a voice suddenly came from inside. Come over. There is indeed a space inside. Don't worry, just come over. Yin Nuoxing and Jing Yuanji looked at each other. Min nodded at him. He sighed helplessly, gritted his teeth, and jumped into the flat surface of the cave. Jing Yuanji and Min also rushed into the black hole with him and disappeared into the starry sky together. Before he jumped in, he imagined what it would be like inside. A platform appeared in the middle of the stars. On the platform stood a temple that was different from the Temple of Origin. It was more magnificent and sacred. The diamond-shaped cave was its tip. It could be another starry sky, or it could appear directly inside a temple. There should be a long corridor in front of him. Before he jumped in, he was still imagining things. After he went in, he found that his previous guesses were all wrong. After he went in, His eyes were covered in darkness. He could not see or sense anything. It seemed that it was not easy to use his power to sense this dark place. The only useful thing seemed to be his five senses. However, it was so dark that he could not see anything. His eyes were already disabled. Damn it! Why is it a dark place again? Yin Nuoxing complained. Suddenly, he felt something soft grab his arm. He was stunned. What is it? Lord Feng, it's me. Jing Yuanji's voice came from his right. Then a cold little hand poked his face. She said to herself, "It seems that my senses are still there. However, I don't know why I can't use other powers. There is a strong suppression of divine right. I can't use any power." Min's voice came from his left. She also touched him to indicate that she was still there. "Hey, have you come in yet? Since you have come in, keep walking forward. Try to walk in a straight line. Don't deviate too much from the path. I will wait for you in this visible place." Jing Yuanji's voice came from the front. She shouted herself hoarse. It did not seem to be very far. The three of them looked at each other. They turned their heads in the darkness and then walked forward together. The sound of 3 pairs of footsteps was very clear in this darkness. Yin Nuoxing was not used to the darkness. He was a little unhappy. He raised his head and shouted to the front, "How long do we have to walk? It's so dark and uncomfortable to look at." Jing Yuanji's voice came from the front after a delay of about 15 seconds. "It took me about 3 minutes to walk here. You can walk faster. Try to keep a straight line. I'm not sure if that dark place is the same as here." Keep a straight line? What kind of strange request was this? Could it be that he would accidentally fall if he walked sideways? Anyway, he did not care about it. Let's walk to the front first. When he walked, he tried many ways to touch the energy. Min said that there was a strong suppression of divine right in this space, but he did not feel anything at the moment. He just felt that the energy in his body was too lazy to respond to his control. He did not feel any attack or hostility for the time being. Well, he could not feel anything else. Plus, it was dark here. He felt a little insecure. After walking forward for 3 minutes, suddenly, unexpectedly, the darkness that could never see any light suddenly disappeared. There was no transition in the middle, and it suddenly switched from darkness to a place with light, causing Yin Nuoxing to be stunned. He calmed down and looked to the side. He found that he was standing on a broken corridor. The corridor was more than 10 meters wide, and there were pillars on both sides. However, there were many gaps near the edge, and there were no steps. As for the space around the corridor, it was foggy, and it was as if he had entered that chaotic space. Looking back, he could see a straight corridor, which was probably the passage he had come from. Jing Yuanji was holding his wrist. She was now looking at the space like him. Except for touching him at the beginning to confirm that he was still there, Min did not touch him at all. Now, they were walking in the darkness, and they were 2 or 3 meters away. The situation seemed to be okay. The three of them and Frost in his arms were all fine. More than 10 meters ahead of the corridor, Jing Yuanji was standing on a piece of rubble that was 5 or 6 meters high and looking at the space. The foggy space in front of him reminded Yin Nuoxing of the grotesque space that he had entered a few days ago. There was no sky or earth. The space in the corridor was very clear. The place outside the corridor was covered with thick fog that kept rolling like clouds and mist rolling in the wind and rain. In those clouds and mist, he could see many rocks floating in the fog. There were also many stone corridors that were broken into sections. They were up and down at various angles and pieced together into huge stairs. They were suspended in the clouds and mist in a crisscross manner and slowly drifted along the clouds and mist. There were also huge rocks the size of a floating island floating in the clouds and mist. When they moved, it was no less than the impact of a meteorite rushing toward his face. These things were distributed in this foggy space irregularly. In a farther place, he seemed to be able to see some other building fragments, but it was not particularly clear. Yin Nuoxing could not tell whether it was a building or not. Other than that, he did not find anything for the time being. The place where they were standing at the moment was also a broken corridor. There were many small pieces of gravel floating in the space. He and Jing Yuanji walked to a place close to the edge. If they walked another 2 or 3 meters, they would probably step out of the range of the corridor. They did not know what would happen if they went out of here. "Hey, don't just stand there. Come over quickly," Jing Yun shouted at Yin Nuoxing and the others from the front. She stood on a huge rock that was 5 or 6 meters higher than the corridor and waved at them. Yin Nuoxing brought his men and walked over. Seeing that he was still looking elsewhere, he also curiously looked around the space, but unfortunately, he did not see anything special. On the other hand, Jing Yun looked very carefully, as if she was looking for something. He could not help but ask, "What did you see? Are you looking for something?" "Yes, I still remember this place." Jing Yun nodded with a smile. "It's a special space set up by the god of origin. It's just that it has become dilapidated now, but I still recognize it." "The special space is here?" Yin Nuoxing looked around and muttered as she shook her head. "I don't see anything special. Why did it float to the place where you guys fought? Is it a problem with the void again?" "Float here." Jing Yun shook her head. "There's a specific entrance to this space, but no one knows where the main body of this space is. Do you understand now?" "Oh." Yin Nuoxing nodded seriously. And then? "And then what is this space used for?" Jing Yun's breathing became sluggish, and her expression slowly became very serious. It became very serious, making Yin Nuoxing and the other two become nervous. They might have encountered a very special place, and it was very likely that this matter was very important. "I forgot." Yin Nuoxing and the others. "Huh. So why did you put on such a serious expression when you said those 2 words? Yin Nuoxing was so angry that she laughed. She sounded as if she was gnashing her teeth. "Can't you just say those 2 words directly? Why did you put on such a serious expression?" "I instinctively felt that it was serious, but I forgot that it's an inescapable fact." Jing Yun raised her hands above her head and spread them out exaggeratedly to express her helplessness. "But I still remember something. Let's go forward. We will probably find the answer if we go forward. It should be something very important. I still have a little impression of it." Yin Nuoxing looked forward. "Do you want us to jump down?" Jing Yun was stunned for a moment and turned her head. Then, she could not help but laugh dryly. The corridor they were in had been cut off. The straight line in front of them was more than 100 meters away from the next landing point. A corridor. In this situation where they could not use their energy, it might be a little difficult to jump over with their suppressed physical strength. A rock. Min raised his head and pointed upwards. It was a huge rock that was floating above them. It was about 40 to 50 meters wide, and it was not moving very fast. The distance was not as far as the corridor, which was 100 meters in a straight line. He immediately received everyone's approval. The 4 of them quickly moved from the rock under their feet to a pillar that was a little taller. Then, they looked for the right opportunity and jumped up. The distance of more than 10 meters was just enough for them to reach the rock. Yin Nuoxing even jumped twice to send Frost up. Then, he landed on the corridor below and jumped again before he could reach the huge rock. "Where will it float to?" Jing Yun was stunned by Yin Nuoxing's question. I really don't know. How would I know where it will float to?" Yin Nuoxing looked down. She left the corridor and looked at the space below. She could see that there were many broken corridors and huge rocks floating in the chaotic and distorted space. Even when she looked at the end of her line of sight, she could not see the blurry shadows in the distance clearly. She did not know if this space had an end in theory, or if it was just a chaotic and disorderly space. Thump! The ball of light in her chest jumped violently, making Yin Nuoxing's breathing stagnate. Her body stiffened for a moment. After a moment, she looked up in front of her. There seemed to be something there that was attracting her, attracting the power of origin. She wanted to go there. The thought came out of nowhere, but it was so strong that it could not be erased. Chapter 1569. This strange space was full of incomprehensible feelings. When they entered the door, all energy was disabled. They were kicked from the clouds to the ground, and many hard stone materials were added to cover them tightly. Even the coffin lids were sealed. They were only missing 7 coffins. Oh, it was not that serious. The current situation was equivalent to hemiplegia. It was a foggy space. At first glance, One would think that there was a thick fog floating in this space. However, when they stood on the broken and twisted corridors and stood on the floating boulders, the fog would disappear into thin air. However, it only disappeared where they stood. Looking outside, the fog was still thick. They could not see the end or the edge. They were like monkeys in the forest, jumping around the corridors and rubble. Sometimes, it was as if they were floating on the endless sea and had to row the boat by themselves, trying to find a way to push the floating boulders forward. However, the effect was minimal. This was the limit when one had no strength. The floating boulders slowly drifted to the front of a corridor that was tilted 45 degrees. Yin Nuashing remembered that they had been drifting with the boulders for as long as 2 hours before they found an island to land on. They looked at the spot and jumped down. They landed heavily on the corridor, creating a loud echo. However, the corridor did not change its position because of the force they dropped from the sky. Based on their experience in the past 10 hours, they already knew that the only things that could float in this foggy space were the rubble and some vertical corridors. They had seen the ladder, but had never stepped on it before. The landing point was too small. Even if they stepped on it, they would still have to float for 1 or 2 hours. The probability of not having any problems was as small as the probability of being blessed by a meteorite while strolling in one's own backyard. It's safe. Jingyin landed on the corridor and waved her hand. She looked back a few times. It hasn't started to collapse yet. Let's go first. We have to find the next landing point quickly. Yin Nuashing nodded and led them to the top of the slope. He looked around and could not help but frown. Is there really an end to this road? Why do I feel that we're getting farther and farther away from the target point that you marked at the beginning? Jingyin could not help but smile bitterly. I'm not the one who set the trajectory of these floating islands, and I haven't figured out the rules yet. Back then, when we climbed onto a boulder, we saw it turn around and go in the opposite direction. Have you forgotten? He couldn't help but sigh and shake his head. We can only slowly explore and try our luck. If our luck is good, maybe the next boulder will bring us to the center when we climb it. You're thinking about Peach. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and continued to move forward. What Jing Yun said was also what they were worried about. At this moment, they could not figure out the movement rules and trajectories of the islands in the fog. These guys who could turn around and change directions at any time had no integrity at all. The corridors were islands rooted in the sea, and the boulders and debris were islands that were faintly discernible in the sea. However, the islands themselves seemed to be unstable. The few corridors that they had climbed earlier showed signs of collapse within a few minutes. The corridor that was originally 1,000 meters long had collapsed to less than 10 meters where people could still stand. If they fell, they had not thought about what would happen if they fell. Looking at the place below that was also foggy, distorted, and chaotic, it was estimated that they would either not find anything, or if something happened, it would be a disaster. It was better not to think about these tricks. He had thought about what if the place they were going to was below, and had the idea of jumping down, but before it could take root, the idea was killed. Jumping up and down. Jing Yuanji waved her hand to fan herself and turned to look at Yin Nuashing. Master Foam, I'll help you carry Frost. Do you want to take a rest? Yin Nuashing carefully sensed for a moment, shook his head, and smiled. No, it's okay now. I can still hold on for a while. You just have to hold me when we cross a long distance. Jing Yuanji nodded and did not insist. They walked to the edge of the island and looked into the distance. It was empty all around, and they could not even see 2 moving islands. In the distance, there were 4 or 5 black shadows coming together. They were very large boulders. Judging from their current trajectory, they should be passing by their island. There was no other place to go at the moment, so it seemed that they could only wait here. With the speed of the floating islands, it would take them less than half an hour to pass by. Jingyan glanced down and could not help but mutter, "What do you think will happen if we jump down?" Uffed! Yin Nuashing had just sat down and was about to rest for a while when he heard this question. He could not help but spit out a mouthful of water and looked at Min Min. Since when did this guy's thoughts resonate with his? No. It's also chaotic and lawless below. It's not safe to jump down. I also thought about the possibility of going down, but my instincts stopped me from thinking about it. Min raised his head and looked up when he heard that. After a moment of silence, he said, "However, compared to the place above, this place is also below. Is it possible that this is an infinite space?" Huh. It's very troublesome for you to ask me this question now. I can't answer it now that my energy is disabled. Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. Infinite space. That was a possibility. After all, it was a special space created by the god of origin and the others. Anything could happen. If only Jing Yin could remember a little more information. In this situation, they could not deduce anything. They could only blindly move forward and keep moving forward. Lord Feng, are we climbing up or walking forward? Jing Yuanji suddenly asked. From the way we jumped up and down just now, we should be walking forward. We should be going deeper into the space, not climbing up. Yin Nuashing pondered as he twirled his long hair. He looked at the foggy space and could not help but roll his eyes. Probably. Speaking of which, he did not know if those were building fragments that he had seen in the beginning were now gone. He did not know where those things were, whether they were hidden in the thick fog, whether they were following behind them, or whether they were hidden in the surrounding space. He was a little concerned about those things that he had caught a glimpse of. It was probably because he did not see them clearly in the beginning. Boom! It sounded like the dull sound of some huge metals colliding. It sounded like the sound of two hard things being pieced together. Yin Nuashing and the others searched in the direction of the sound. They saw that about 100 meters away, there were two huge rocks that were more than 100 meters wide colliding with each other. Then, they slowly separated. A huge island was floating towards them. Yin Nuashing tilted his head and looked in another direction. A few dark figures were slowly emerging from the thick fog. They were indeed floating islands. However, looking at how slow they were, they originally thought that they would be able to reach them in half an hour. Now, it seemed that they would not be able to reach them. Moreover, the new island that appeared was not far in front of them. Looks like we don't have to wait. Those few are floating too slowly. How are they greeting their guests? Jing Yin Nuashing grinned and stood up. He looked at Yin Nuashing and said, "As usual, I'll go up and explore the way first. After that, you guys will—" "What's wrong?" Before he could finish his sentence, he saw Yin Nuashing's face turn pale and then dark. His eyes were still staring ahead. He could not help but turn his gaze as well. Then he saw that the island that had just appeared seemed to be accelerating towards them. Moreover, its speed seemed to be a little fast. It was as fast as a comet crashing into the earth. They could even hear the reverberating sound in the air. If this thing hits us, we will be turned into minced meat, right? Yin Nuashing looked at the huge rock that was rapidly approaching them and subconsciously took a step back. At this moment, they were just a group of mortals who did not have much strength. If such a huge rock fell down, it would weigh tens of thousands of tons. It would be able to crush them into a thin layer of paper in an instant. Run! Jing Yin Nuashing waved his hand and was about to run back when he suddenly saw that the trajectory of the huge rock seemed to be a little off. He felt that it was just an illusion. The actual landing point might be far beyond his imagination. He hurriedly stopped Yin Nuashing and the others, who were about to turn around, and said, Hey, wait a minute. Look, that rock doesn't seem to be able to hit us." Yin Nuashing heard him and looked back at the huge island that was getting closer and closer. She calculated according to the curved trajectory that it was rapidly moving forward. Then she nodded and said, "Indeed, it won't hit us head on. However, it will rub against the bottom of this corridor. There might be a strong vibration later." Boom! As soon as he finished speaking, Jing Yuanji and the others had already squatted down. Then, the huge island that looked like a piece of land smashed against the bottom of the corridor they were in. The strong vibration almost threw them into the air. Yin Nuashing hurriedly lay on the ground and felt the strong vibration that came from below. She subconsciously waved her hand to stop the vibration. However, she remembered that she was a weakling at this moment. She put down her hand with a bitter smile and wailed. "My calculation speed is a little slow. My mind is also limited. My brain is not working well." Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. The huge rock hit the corridor and caused a strong vibration of more than 10 to 20 magnitudes. When the vibration subsided a little, Yin Nuashing and the others got up from the ground. Just as they were about to see the tragic scene of the two giants playing the bumper car, they found that the things around them seemed to be moving backward rapidly. In other words, the island they were on was sent flying by the island at a fast speed. This is bad. How are we going to escape at this speed? Jing Yuanji slapped her shoulder and looked like she was having a headache. She could not help but smile bitterly. Didn't they say that the slanted corridors would not move? But the corridors we saw along the way really did not move. How would they fly out just like that? Bad luck. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Following him would lead to bad luck all the time. After all, he was the #1 bane of the void and the #1 disaster of the Great Yuan realm. Not to mention the results that they observed that seemed to be the case, even if the results were determined by the rules. As long as they were touched by him, accidents would happen at any moment. Moreover, this is only what we observed. God knows what kind of rules this chaotic space follows. Maybe it's just our wishful thinking that these slanted corridors won't move, but in fact, it's just that the corridors we stepped on just happened not to be hit, and the corridors we observed just happened not to move. Jing Yuanji shook her head, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. What should we do now? Follow this corridor and keep flying forward, or find a chance to jump out of the car? Min said, it's too fast. If we jump out at this speed, we'll get hurt all over. But we're getting further and further away from the marked destination. We're almost out of sight. Make a decision as soon as possible. No. Even if you ask me, I don't know either. Little brother, hurry up and think of a way. Being stared at by Min and Jing Yuanji at the same time, Jing Yuanji's forehead was sweating. He smiled bitterly and threw the ball to Yin Nuashing. He blinked at him hard. Hurry up and use your identity as an inheritor of origins to think of a way. Designate a good place to act. How do I know what to do now? The energy of origins doesn't care about me. What can I do? Can I use my head to point you in the direction? Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes hard. His gaze swept across the rapidly retreating space. His gaze suddenly paused when he looked down. He seemed to have seen something. Far below, there was a faint light in the misty space. It was very dim, like the starlight at night blocked by the moonlight. It was so dim that it was almost invisible. The moment he saw the light in his heart flickered violently again. A thought uncontrollably rushed into his mind, causing him to impulsively say, "Let's jump down." The air was silent for a moment. Jing Yuanji walked to the side and picked his ear. Jing Yuanji pressed her hands on Yin Nuashing's shoulders and looked at him lovingly. "Lord Feng, please wake up." Yin Nuashing, "No, I'm very awake now." "But you suddenly said such impulsive words. How do you make us think that you're awake?" Min rolled his eyes fiercely. Ever since she was bombarded by billions of sound waves in the sea of noise, the ice on this girl's face began to melt. Now, she could even make such a difficult expression. "Is there a reason? Do we have to go down?" Jing Yuanji gulped and said with a trembling voice. If he said yes, then he would jump down even if he had to risk falling and becoming disabled. After all, he was the inheritor of the origin energy. Furthermore, this space was related to the origin heavenly god and the others. An inheritor's directional actions were more reliable than the actions of this group of people who were as confused as the scene. Yin Nuashing stared at the light. It seemed to have noticed his gaze. The light flickered even more intensely, causing his breathing to quicken slightly. At this moment, this island was about to pass by the best landing point. If he didn't jump, wait, did this space follow the laws of physics? Should he calculate the landing point or something? Jump! Yin Nuashing shouted for no reason. Hurry up and jump. He suddenly reached out and grabbed Jing Yuanji's hand, pulling her towards the edge of the corridor. Then, he bravely jumped towards the edge. Jing Yuanji and Min were dumbfounded. They didn't have time to say anything. They gritted their teeth and rushed out with a soft shout. The feeling of weightlessness instantly swept over their bodies. Looking down, they could see the clouds and mist rushing towards them. They didn't feel like they were touching anything when the clouds and mist hit their faces. Jing Yuanji was also shocked by Lord Feng's sudden action. She noticed the determined light in his eyes and didn't suspect or ask any questions. Even though she knew that she might become a pancake if she fell at this speed, she was mentally prepared to be at the bottom. Come to the back. Yin Nuoxing seemed to know what she was thinking. He pulled her hand forward and pushed Jing Yuanji onto his back. Don't move. In theory, there shouldn't be a problem. Jing Yuanji and Min sprinted from the back to the same position as them. They slowly adjusted their posture and slowed down their landing speed. Jing Yuanji opened her mouth and shouted, "Do you have any thoughts? At this speed, you'll become a pancake in minutes." Yin Nuoxing shouted like a hoodlum, "I don't have any thoughts." Jing Yuanji was speechless. After all, he was once a heavenly god. He couldn't fall to his death in this place, right? Yin Nuoxing didn't think anymore and didn't pay much attention to anything. He felt a heavy feeling in his heart for no reason. It was a kind of intuition that came from the bottom of his heart. It seemed to come from the origin energy. Ever since they came to this space, they had not moved at all. Now they actually moved. Furthermore, she had a feeling that some ancient secret was about to be revealed here. However, there was also a sense of relaxation in the heavy atmosphere. It was as if the secret was not something special, a secret of great importance. Even so, Yin Nuoxing felt that he was not prepared to face their secrets. Those deadly secrets. Forget it. Shaking his head to throw these messy thoughts to the back of his mind, Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath with difficulty and let the suffocating feeling in his chest dissipate slowly. He didn't want to think about it anymore. Anyway, since he saw her phantom in the origin world that day, nothing happened without sufficient preparation. Even before that, when facing a major event of their level, there was no need to prepare at all. He just needed to accept it calmly. There seems to be a reaction from the origin energy. Jing Yuanji suddenly shouted, "There is a movement from the origin energy in the surrounding disordered space. It should be right, but I can't guarantee that it's the right place to go. There's no such thing as the right place, right?" Yin Nuoxing's heart suddenly trembled. He calmly said this sentence, startling Jing Yuanji and the others. The existence of this space itself is revealing some things. There's no such thing as the right direction at all. As long as we walk in here, we will embark on the journey to find the things that have passed away. What we can find and how far we can find depends on our own ability. Min glanced at him and then looked ahead. A dark shadow quickly appeared in the misty space, and it was getting bigger and bigger. It was bigger than all the dark shadows that they saw when they came to this space. Its body was still hidden in the thick fog, but it was already this big. Min reminded, something is coming out from below. There it is. Yin Nuoxing's eyes widened. A dark red light appeared in his eyes. He could not ignore the light of the energy now. This sudden change made his vision turn dark red. The whole world turned dark red. The rapidly flowing clouds below suddenly dispersed, and the huge thing that was still hidden in the thick fog was suddenly exposed in his sight. He could not help but hold his breath. That was a continent. The huge continent was not a floating boulder in the space, but a continuous continent that extended very far and encompassed a large area. Looking down from such a height, they could clearly see many details of the continent. The green plains, the endless mountains, the flowing rivers. The green scenery brought the breath of life to them, but on the contrary, they could not feel any signs of life at all. It was like a continent that had been solidified like the starry sky outside. It was just a portrait. That's it. That's it. This place. Look at the center of the continent. Jing Yuanji suddenly screamed and pointed at the continent that was rapidly enlarging in their vision. They could no longer see anything other than the continent. They could no longer see the entire continent at a glance, but it was still rapidly enlarging, and it seemed to be very far away. Yin, Nuoxing, and the others found the center of the continent. Their eyes paused at the centermost place. Their eyes could not help but focus. A pure, white palace complex with an eternal sacred aura. That's the place where the heavenly god of origin and the others live. Jing Yuanji's scream reached Yin Nuoxing's ears. His cheeks twitched, and he suddenly felt a lack of oxygen in his brain. His head tilted to one side, and he almost fainted. Chapter 1570. The huge continent was rapidly approaching in his line of sight. Yin Nuoxing stared at the approaching ground and watched as it crashed towards his face. Just as he was about to think of a way, the energy in his body suddenly trembled, causing his expression to stagnate. The origin energy broke out of his body uncontrollably and wrapped all of them in an energy ball. Boom! The impact of the accelerated fall splashed a circle of shock waves visible to the naked eye. The crystallized energy ball suddenly dispersed, revealing the intact ground and Yin Nuoxing and the others. I really thought I was going to fall to my death here. Jing Yun could not help but mutter. Standing on the plains where the dust was gradually dispersing, she looked into the distance with a somewhat excited expression. There's no mistake. This is that continent. It's the continent where the origin heavenly god and the others once lived. Jing Yuanji and the others' expressions changed drastically. They all had the same feeling as Yin Nuoxing. They could not catch their breath, their heads were a little lacking in oxygen, and they almost fainted on the ground. A model. Everyone, she was gasping for breath. It's just a model? Min could not help but frown. He scanned his surroundings and found many traces of real existence. If this was a model, there was a little too real. Well, it's just a model. Originally, it was said that there was a continent in this space that was similar to the continent where the heavenly god of origin and the others lived in. Very few people have ever seen it. It's just that they casually created it and threw it here. The real body is not here. It should be. Jing Yun's face trembled as she spoke. She smiled bitterly and scratched her head. The outside world has changed. I don't even know where the space that I knew before is now. In the lower and middle plains, drifting along the ocean currents of the void, and finally taking root in the chaos of the void. Yin Nuoxing responded faintly. Then, she raised her hand and stretched it straight forward. All the origin marks on her body appeared from under her skin, shining with an unusually bright and dazzling light. Jing Yun and the others felt that the energy seemed to have some signs of life in it. Their eyes were a little shocked. The origin energy, after discovering this continent, they became a little restless. Yin Nuoxing frowned and tried to control them. However, he gave up after a while. With his weak mortal strength, fighting against the restless movements of 100 or 200 origin energies was simply courting death. He might as well let go of all his restraints and see what they wanted to do. Move aside. Be careful of any accidents. Jing Yuanji and the others nodded and took a few steps back. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath, closed his eyes, and released all the restraints on his body. Then, the source energy that had been restless in his body for some time suddenly burst out with an unusually large amount of energy from his arm. The four of them were shocked and quickly retreated. Lord Foam, Jing Yuanji was a little frightened and hurriedly shouted, "I'm fine. Don't come over." Yin Nuoxing gritted his teeth. At this moment, the origin energy rushed out of his body like crazy. Then, like 100 or 200 creatures with strong consciousness, they gathered in midair and gathered into a large amount of energy. After a while, it suddenly exploded, turning into a torrential energy rain that sprinkled on the continent. Originally, the aura of life was very small, and the continent was a little dead and frozen. Stimulated by this energy, it suddenly felt as if it had come alive. The energy rain lasted for a full 5 minutes. Yin Nuoxing felt that they had drained the frozen energy in his body. At this moment, his face was pale. Because of the lack of energy, his body slowly became transparent. If he hadn't stopped in time, he might have really been drained dry. It finally stopped. What a difficult tenet. Yin Nuoxing breathed a long sigh of relief. He thought that they would leave his body, but now it seemed that it was probably because they thought of someone and inexplicably triggered some kind of reaction that caused a riot just now. Looking at this movement, were they activating the continent? After hundreds of millions of years of silence, countless years of time, they wanted to revive this continent that had become empty and dead under the erosion of time. There seems to be a little change. Jing Yuanji looked at the distant sky and said to Yun Nuoxing, the scattered source energy has activated this frozen continent. It's probably their consciousness, a little remnant impression or something. Even if this is a mirror image created based on the continent they live in, it still contains traces of their existence. Yin Nuoxing could not help but raise his eyebrows when he heard that. That's not right. According to what you said, when I went to the world of origin last time, why? Oh, I wasn't possessed by them at that time. There was also the 139th era. At that time, his memory of the source energy had not recovered. This part of the energy was probably sealed in his soul, so was not triggered. Nothing happened when he went to that world. Otherwise, that luminous fellow would have recognized him. There was a muffled sound of thunder echoing in the continent. There was also a faint tremor on the ground. It was just a small movement. Yin Nuoxing realized that he could feel that it was the world shaking on its own. It was a movement that was adjusting itself. It did not have any consciousness. The movement was purely due to the large amount of source energy that had just leaped out of his body. They were adjusting this world. This continent is slowly coming alive. Min's eyes flashed for a moment. What will happen? Anything could happen. Nothing would be unexpected. After all, this is a world created by the heavenly god of origin and the others. Yin Nuoxing replied, a normal continent? No, this continent's existence is not normal. It is too dull and monotonous. There is only a cluster of palaces. The rest of the continent is like an abandoned place. In the end, it is just a model, and this group of source energy spirits seems to be planning to show you the world that exists in their impressions and memories. Jing Yuanji and the others turned to look into the distance. There was a huge mirror-like image in the distant space. Some huge object was slowly emerging as a whole. The cluster of source energy seemed to be constructing and casting something. From the blurry appearance, it could be a small floating island. There were more such situations happening in the distance. Yin Nuoxing was right. They were indeed on this continent. Moreover, they were reshaping this huge model based on the continent that existed in their impressions. Boom! Yin Nuoxing and the others were stunned when they felt a violent tremor beneath their feet. They hurriedly lowered their heads. Then they saw a white, jade-like platform rising from the ground bit by bit. It lifted them up as well. It only stopped when it was 12 or 13 meters high. This white jade-like platform looked like a huge trophy. There were many patterns and traces of unknown decorations on it. As for what those patterns were, Jing Yuanji did not understand. This platform, I seem to have some impression of it. What is it used for? Jing Yuanji grimaced and hissed in distress. He should still remember, but he just could not remember. Yin Nuoxing casually walked around the platform that suddenly appeared. It looked like a regular circle. The base was slightly larger than the platform itself. There were many patterns on the smooth surface that spread from the edges to the center like little snakes. The entire platform flashed with a blue light, and the reconstruction seemed to be complete. In the center of the white jade platform, 2 meters above the ground, there was another sphere. It was a sphere of energy. There seemed to be chains of order and energy extending from the sphere. The other end was connected to the edge of the platform. It seemed to be locking the sphere in the center of the platform. The ball surged with an energy that made Yin Nuoxing feel uncomfortable. A sense of sadness appeared in his heart for no reason, causing him to feel a little surprised. He traced this nameless emotion to find its source and found that it was actually the origin energy. They seemed to be very familiar with this energy, but the ball itself seemed to be made of origin energy. He did not know if it was because they thought of someone again when they saw it, or if there was a story behind this ball that seemed to be the origin energy itself. Yin Nuoxing and the others pushed away the touchable chains and walked to the front of the sphere of energy. They were curiously observing the dark blue sphere of energy when they suddenly felt the space around them flicker. They looked around but did not find any changes. After a while, They collectively fixed their gazes on a certain spot. Coupled with Jing Yuanji's cry of surprise, Yin Nuoxing felt like he had received a ton of shock today. Lord Origin, Heavenly God, a blurry white figure that looked like a human, slowly walked over from the edge of the platform. It was wearing clothes that could not be said to be luxurious. It was a distance away from plain clothes. There was a strange aura on its body that was incomparably divine. It seemed to be slowly walking over from a distant time. Yin Nuoxing and the others subconsciously took a step back. Jing Yuanji's pretty face trembled violently. She could not help but ask, "Which lord is it?" Jing Yuanji stared at the blurry figure and shook her head with a bitter smile. "I don't know." Its true body did not descend, so no matter who looks at it, they can only see this blurry ball of light. However, based on my experience of meeting Lord Origin Heavenly God many times, this is definitely one of them. Can the Origin energy reconstruct their avatars? Min raised his eyebrows slightly. He seemed to have an idea. It shouldn't be. This is just a scene that exists in their memories. It was accidentally revealed during the reconstruction. Jing Yuanji shook her head. She looked at the ball of light and said, "Let's observe the situation first. This should be a scene that existed in the past. Let's see what this lord is doing here." Yin Nuoxing nodded and took 2 steps back uneasily. Then he felt that he still did not feel safe and took 2 more steps back. Only then did he heave a sigh of relief and cast his gaze at the translucent shadow. The other party was just a shadow, but Yin Nuoxing was afraid of the so-called shadow left behind by the Heavenly God of Origin. Last time in the world of Origin, he was also glared at by the shadow, which made him feel uncomfortable all over. Now, it was surrounded by a kind of sad atmosphere. It was a little heavy. It stopped 5 meters in front of the dark blue ball of energy. It turned around and slowly circled around it. The translucent shadow passed through Min, making her shiver. Then, it walked forward to the ball and reached out to the space behind it. As the space trembled, it slowly took out a light blue, almost transparent water ball. It slowly walked to the center and placed the water ball in the exact same position as the dark blue ball of energy. The translucent shadow suddenly shouted in an unknown direction and nodded. It was probably responding to something. Then it stretched out its hands and stroked the space in front of it. A string of energy chains swept out from the edge of the platform and tied up the translucent water ball. Suddenly, it sighed and whispered something. Yin Nuoxing nudged Jing Yun with her elbow. What did it say? We don't understand the original divine language. Jing Yun heard and temporarily took over the task of translating. She replied in the universal language. You and I, one of us will be frozen in time, break out of the cocoon, or walk towards destruction. I hope the final result will not be too bad. I hope the distant result. Jing Yun listened carefully. She did not hear anything else. Then she shrugged. That's all. That's all it said. Suddenly, the translucent water ball and the translucent shadow slowly disappeared with a buzzing sound of energy. Yin Nuoxing and the others watched as it slowly melted into the air and finally disappeared. The scene back then seemed to have come to an end. What did that mean? Min looked at Yin Nuoxing. How would I know? There's no context, and I don't know what this ball does. I can't guess what it does either. Yin Nuoxing could not help but smile bitterly. At this moment, the origin energy that created this scene clearly did not care about him. He also had no way of knowing what the Heavenly God of Origin was doing here. The vague feeling in his heart told him that the Heavenly God of Origin he saw just now was probably not her. By the way, he also heard what it said just now. This was filled with the atmosphere of parting and the content of arrangements for the future. It was probably the scene before the end of the mythological era. Well, he was just making a wild guess. He did not know the details at all. In his body, the origin energy essence that had created this scene suddenly transmitted some sorrowful and painful feelings, causing Yin Nuoxing to sigh as well. Was this origin energy its power? This ball. He suddenly walked forward as if he was possessed. He reached out his hand and gently pulled the ball of energy out of the bindings of the dozens of chains. Everyone, Yin Nuashing only came back to his senses after a long while. When he saw that he had removed the ball, his smiling face instantly stiffened. Dense beads of sweat condensed into a waterfall and flowed down his face. He could not help but mumble, "It's over. I'm cold. I'm gone. I'm cracked. Have a safe journey." When Min heard his mumbling, he sighed and waved at him as a farewell. Jing Yuanji and Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. However, after waiting for a long time, he did not see any changes. Yin Nuashing was waiting for what might happen next. He was prepared for all the illusions, tests, restraints, and bindings. When did he not end up like this when he touched their things? Well, it seemed that there was no change at all this time. This was a little beyond his expectations. He tossed the dark blue energy ball in his hand. As he removed the ball, all the chains around it fell to the ground and turned into energy that dissipated into the air. He looked at the energy ball that seemed to have solidified with the passage of time. After a long while, he put it into the mark of origin. Then his body trembled slightly, and he was sweating profusely again. "What's wrong? Did you gain some new insights after touching the things of the heavenly god of origin?" Jing Yuanji asked jokingly. "No." Yin Nuashing shook his head and looked away from the platform. He pondered for a moment and said slowly, "I feel that these things seem to have really existed for so many years. They have really lived for more than a dozen eras. It's just that they have only awakened now." Yin Nuashing looked into the distance and pondered for a moment. Then he waved his hand and said, "Come, let's take a look over there. We'll talk on the way." After coming to this continent, the energy that they had lost contact with seemed to have come back to life. Yin Nuashing and the others randomly picked a direction and walked forward. Apart from the cluster of palaces, everything else had just been reconstructed. This time, Yin Nuashing felt an indescribable sense of heaviness in his heart. It was like an intuition, but also like a very real feeling. He had this feeling from the moment he touched the energy ball and put it into his mark of origin. His heart was filled with goosebumps, and his head was a little numb. He really wasn't prepared for this at all. Suddenly having to face these life-threatening things really gave him a headache. Even though we saw it reconstruct with our own eyes, these things don't seem to be forgeries reconstructed from energy. They really do exist. Yin Nuashing landed in front of a totem pole made of white jade. He reached out his hand and touched it gently. A feeling that originated from the passage of time and the void came from his hand. He narrowed his eyes slightly and felt the flow of time. Then, he combined it with the feeling that the energy of origin was transmitting to him. Subconsciously, he said, "They really existed before, and they still exist now. It's just that they don't exist on that destroyed and deformed continent." That's right. That world had already been destroyed. The last time he went there, he only saw ruins. Now, looking at this model, compared to the original continent, there seemed to be many vague similarities. This plain, the mountains in the distance, and the cluster of palaces, all of them had similar terrains. It was just that the things that originally existed were all destroyed along with the war. They once existed. No, you mean, the eyes of the little angel flickered. She seemed to understand what he meant. They now exist here. The things that once existed on that continent have now been transferred here along with the energy of origin. Is that what you mean? Jingyan shuddered when he heard this. This seemed a little. No, with their means, yes, they could do this to this extent. Perhaps they still remembered the existence of such a model, which was why they did this. Otherwise, why would the energy of origin suddenly move when it came here and couldn't wait to reconstruct this continent? Yin Nuashing shuddered. This is great. They could just lie to me that this place is different from the continent that existed in the world of origin. Now it's really different. It's been reconstructed to the way it was when they still existed here. The time room returned to how it was before the war began. Yin Nuashing and the others might only feel a chill down their spines, but to Jing Yun, this memory of the scene, everything that existed in this place, made him feel dazed. Chapter 1571. Because of their arrival, and the origin energy brought by Yun Nuashing, the originally empty and dead continent gradually woke up from the seal of time. On the frozen continent, perhaps the origin energy preserved images from who knows how many years ago popped up together when they woke up. Why does it sound like a ghost story? But the protagonists of those ghost stories are quite scary. Although they have passed away for many years, Yun Nuashing felt that they could definitely jump out of some distorted space in some corner of the void of 8 Elements realm and scare him. They could even push his head to some unknown place to torture him. Honestly, he had seen such things many times. Since he was appointed as the force of 8 Elements realm, he would not feel surprised about anything. At most, he would be a bit scared. Yun Nuashing thought that Yun Nuashing was a force of 8 Elements realm. After standing on the plane for a while, Yun Nuashing began to recall the location of the square in the origin world. The square that had been reshaped by her should have some meaning in it. Perhaps it carried some memories, or perhaps it was an important place. After comparing for a long time, he reluctantly sorted out the direction and flew toward a certain place with Jing Yuanji and the others. When they passed by the origin energy essence that had reshaped the place, they could not help but touch it, releasing images that had been sealed for countless years and seeing a piece of dusty history. However, it was not a particularly important history. This was their former residence. Except for the war at the end of the Gods era, there should not be any earth-shattering events here. But it made Yun Nuashing feel that they who lived here were actually just living a normal, peaceful, and comfortable life here. They were not much different from the mortals. As expected, it is the result of looking at mysterious things with one's own eyes. Yun Nuashing sighed in his heart. Just like in the realm of the gods, the mortals and the beings who knew about them would probably subconsciously cover him and Hui with a layer of black cloth and add a lot of self-definition in their hearts. In fact, the two of them were not the same as the other beings' imaginations. Their lives were often ordinary. Now, from another perspective, he had also measured the origin heavenly god and the others with his own thoughts. But in fact, they were just like them, living a normal life in their own world every day. Until an earth-shattering event broke out and disrupted all of this. Resentment, hatred, there was some. The more he came into contact with them, the more the continent was reshaped. Yun Nuashing could clearly feel such emotions from the origin energy. They probably also carried the emotions of their master at the last scene. So, when they saw this, when their surprise and excitement gradually calmed down, the true state of mind that was hidden behind the scenes emerged. It was a hatred and resentment that wanted to crush the entire 8 Elements realm, but there was also a touch of helplessness hidden in it. In contrast, her energy was actually calmer, which made Yun Nuashing a little stunned. He sighed and shook his head. He thought that he was infallible again. He had seen her illusion and knew her state of mind and feelings at that time. Her energy could not appear to be so calm. So, this was probably just the emotions that the origin energy essence showed. It was related to them, but probably not very much. This continent was very peaceful. The reshaping of the origin energy essence was coming to an end. He did not see any living things being reshaped. Perhaps it was not necessary, or perhaps it could not be done. This caused the continent to lack some vitality. Even though there were many things around, and it did not look as desolate and dry as it was at first glance, there was no vitality at all. It was still just a decoration. Only Yun Nuashing and the others wandered around the continent casually, looking for things that he cared about. Girl, compare it with your memory. According to the terrain, it should be right in front of us, right? Yun Nuashing whispered to the little angel in his soul. The little angel nodded immediately. She knew what he was looking for and what he was doing. She had been paying attention since the beginning and was comparing it with her memory. The world of origin displayed before them was a world that had been tortured and destroyed by war. That continent was only left with ashes and burnt land. There were many things that were far from what they saw now. Even if they compared the images one by one, there were very few places that were more than 50% similar. Some places had even changed their appearance after the war. They might not be able to find it even if they blindly compared it with the images. But at that time in the world of origin, they did not see anything unique on that continent. Take the throne and the square, for example. They had been wandering around for half an hour, but they still could not find those two things. Could it be that she did not repair that place, but reshaped something? The little angel reminded him softly. Her soul looked at the horizon and saw the group of palaces in the center. Her golden eyes turned. For example, there. Yin Nuashing shuddered and shook his head with an unnatural expression. If it's there, I don't want to touch it for the time being. I'm afraid, that's what it is. You know what I mean. The little angel could not help but smile bitterly. This guy was really afraid of the god of origin and the others. The latter had accidentally or intentionally left behind those things that he touched and turned him into this neurotic state. If he went through it a few more times, he would probably stay away even if the Yuanshu realm was used as a bargaining chip in his face. On a floating island in midair, there was a huge circular platform in sight. There were 7 curved suspension bridges around the floating island. The other end of the suspension bridges was connected to a small island that was 3 or 4 times smaller than the main floating island in the center. The surrounding scene was a surging sea of clouds. They seemed to be hidden in the clouds. Isn't the degree of reconstruction a little too high? Jing Nuashing stood at the edge of the floating island and looked at the sea of clouds around her. She could see the figure of the rising sun in the gaps of the sea of clouds. She could not help but exclaim, 20 minutes ago, you said that it was almost done. Why is it not done yet? How would I know if you ask me? Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly when he heard that. It was the group of origin energy spirits that were acting on their own. It had nothing to do with him. Well, if you really wanted to talk about the relationship, it was because they didn't have enough energy to borrow energy from him. That was the only relationship, and now they were still using a lot of energy. 4 of his 36 worlds had been drained, and the energy consumption alone was no less than fighting with a heavenly god of the beginning. There were still faint traces of energy surging on the floating island in the center. It should be because it was still slowly being reconstructed. Some details were still being perfected. The size of the floating island itself was also expanding bit by bit. The 7 floating islands that were close to it were also being pushed further away. Yin Nuashing and the others were casually walking around this huge floating island. They watched as the transparent energy rapidly formed an illusory shadow of an object. Then bit by bit, it formed a real body. The empty floating island gradually became more substantial. Gradually, it became somewhat familiar. It was so familiar that his footsteps paused for a moment. The little angel was stunned when she saw those objects that were just shadows and had not begun to be reconstructed. She frowned and looked at them in confusion. Suddenly, she exclaimed, "Little star, this is that square." Some things were being reconstructed and reconstructed. Yin Nuashing recognized it when he saw those things that were a quarter of an arc. At this time, he looked at the huge stone pillars that appeared on the square. He was completely sure that this was the square that he saw in the world of origin. It was just that it existed on this floating island now. He didn't know if that battle had finally destroyed this island. That was why he saw the square standing on the ground there. Holy Land Pilgrimage. Yin Nuashing couldn't help but mutter. The list in his soul slowly ticked off a certain item. Then he smiled bitterly and shook his head. What am I doing? In any case, they were searching for these things because they didn't know what to do. After coming to this continent, they would definitely have to go to the palace complex in the center. It was just that he hadn't recovered yet and wasn't mentally prepared to explore it. So, he temporarily avoided facing it. Jing Yun and the others were also clear that he was deliberately avoiding that place. So, they didn't say anything. Now, they were just taking it as a vacation in this holy land, relaxing their minds and relieving their stress and whatnot. The reconstruction of the floating island square took 10 minutes to complete. The familiar scene rushed into Yun Nuashing's memory. He confirmed that this was the original appearance of the square that he saw in the world of origin in the 139th era. However, the background was different now. One was on the ground, while the other was floating in the sky. The shape was exactly the same. And right in front of him, deep in the square, he could see the golden throne. Yin Nuoxing walked straight to the throne. Jing Yun saw that his careful, trembling walk suddenly turned into a majestic gait. She couldn't help but be stunned for a moment. Then, she looked ahead and saw that he was rushing straight to the throne. Her heart thumped, and she hurriedly chased after him. The throne in her memory was exactly the same. There was nothing much to say. Yin Nuoxing took a few glances. Under the horrified gazes of Jing Yun and Jing Yuanji, who were chasing after him, he turned around and sat down on the throne. He crossed his legs and propped his chin on his hand. His gaze was a little serious, so serious that the three of them held their breaths. It's cold and a little hard. With a stiff and serious expression, Yin Nuoxing said very seriously, I used but to confirm it. It's a familiar throne. Everyone, oh my God, so this wasn't the first time this guy had done something like this? He even dared to sit on the throne of the heavenly god of origin. They really didn't know what to say. Hey, don't be so nervous. It's just a hard stone throne. When Yin Nuoxing saw that Jing Yuanji and the others' expressions had become distorted due to shock, he waved his hand carelessly. Yep, actually, he was very nervous. Although this was the third time he had sat on the throne, he still, according to the time, this should be the second time. Yep, that's right. He still felt uneasy. Speaking of which, why did he have to sit on the throne every time? He didn't understand. Sometimes, even he himself couldn't figure out what was going on in his mind. Could it be that he was annoyed after being tortured by the heavenly god of origin and the others? So he wanted to do something to vent his anger? Little angel, you have a temper like a child. Yin Nuoxing. I didn't. Don't talk nonsense. A soft energy humming sound came from his body. Yin Nuoxing saw that his body was emitting a reddish-black light. A ball of reddish-black energy came out from his chest with a pop. It looked around and finally fixed its gaze on Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing looked at the throne behind Yin Nuoxing, and its gaze seemed to become strange. What's wrong? Yin Nuoxing looked at the mass of energy that belonged to her floating out of his body curiously. In the past, it would not appear even if something big happened. Now that it suddenly appeared, he was stunned. He tilted his head and looked at it. Then, he pointed at the throne under his butt and asked, You care about this a lot? The mass of reddish-black energy circled around him. For some reason, Yin Nuoxing seemed to hear a low sigh in his mind. He couldn't tell if it was a male or a female voice, and he couldn't tell the size of the voice. However, when he tried to distinguish it carefully, he felt that this voice was very familiar. It sounded like everyone, but also like no one. It was the same when it spoke to him last time, so he didn't find it strange. Wait a moment. Yin Nuoxing was stunned. The origin energy in his body was left behind by the origin energy essences that lurked at the bottom of the divine realm. They were similar to doppelgangers, but more complicated and mysterious. Although they had similar emotional reactions like the main body, he had never heard them speak before. Why did this one seem different? Your main body followed you. You just realized? It had a strange expression, mainly because he couldn't tell what was going on with this mass of light. It replied in his mind, I've been following you ever since you left. Why? There's no why. Yin Nuoxing choked for a moment. He coughed softly and asked, Then, what do you want to do now that you're out here? It circled around him and floated forward. Yin Nuoxing waited for a while before he heard it say, Don't waste your time here. Go there. That's where you should go. Yin Nuoxing looked at the place where it was pointing at the center of the palace. His cheeks twitched, and he couldn't help but mutter, What if I don't go? You have to go. It said faintly. There was no emotion in its voice. It didn't sound angry or anxious. It seemed to be just reminding him, although it sounded like an order, there's not much time left. If you want to go there, you have to go now. Looking from above, he cast his gaze from the sea of clouds to the white, jade-like palace complex. His cheeks twitched for a while. He looked at the origin energy for a while and suddenly shook his head vigorously. I'm not going. I'm not going. Go quickly. I'm not going. At least not now. I don't want to touch those weird things. You have to go. Jing Yuanji and the other two looked at the two people confronting each other from a distance. The atmosphere was tense, and they were about to fight. They couldn't help but smile bitterly. This was the first time they saw a guy who could quarrel with his own energy. This was nothing new. One person and one energy confronted each other for 5 minutes. Yin Nuashing was defeated by its dry and repetitive response. His face was ashen and unwilling. His facial expression had undergone a set of difficult changes in 3 seconds. His face was cramping. "You stop. Stop nagging. I'll go, okay." Yin Nuashing shouted crazily. He had never seen an energy that could quarrel with someone, and he even lost. It floated back from where it was and circled around Yin Nuashing. Before it got into his body, it whispered, "Go there and find that thing." Leaving behind a mindless voice, it got into his body. Yin Nuashing's face was conflicted and depressed. His consciousness hurriedly entered his body, but it had already hidden and disappeared. As for the other origin energies, it was only now that he noticed that the origin energies had all quieted down. Some of the faint voices that reverberated on the continent seemed to have disappeared not long ago. The origin energy had finished reshaping the continent. Standing at the edge of the floating island and looking at the white, jade-like palaces, Yin Nuashing's conflicted and faint resistance appeared again. This was really like being chased away with a whip. He knew that he would definitely walk there, but when he thought that he was being chased there by his energy, he felt weak all over. The subtle fear and resistance in his heart not only did not decrease, it seemed to have inadvertently increased by more than 2 times. "So, are you ready?" Jing Yin Nuashing tilted her head and looked at him. Seeing his reluctant expression, she couldn't help but shake her head. "If you really aren't ready, just walk around a little longer. Anyway, there's no rush. Even if this continent was built based on that continent, the origin heavenly god and the others had actually lived here for a period of time. Otherwise, they wouldn't have left behind such an aura. You should be able to feel this feeling more than us." He didn't want to feel it. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes. Doing these strange things, it wasn't like he wanted to do it. He was inexplicably thrown a bunch of things at him, and it involved the most mysterious group of people in this world of order. The fear in his heart had already broken through the sky. A red and black light flickered in his body. It was slightly gentle and wanted to calm his restless heart, but he couldn't help but smile bitterly, using the source of fear to calm the fear in his heart. Did she think that he wasn't scared enough? "All right, I'll go. Don't rush me." Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief and shook his head helplessly. He jumped down from the floating island and rushed straight toward the palace complex. The group of white jade palaces was situated on a protruding mountain-like terrain, which was about 130 feet higher than the plain below. If one were to stand at the entrance and turn around to look behind, one would be able to see 70 to 80% of the continent at a glance. The rest of the continent was blocked by the mountains and could not be seen at a glance. After being forced to mentally prepare himself, Yin Nuashing didn't hesitate or think about anything. He directly slammed the door open and strode forward with a fearless attitude. Jing Yun and Jing Yuanji turned back to look at the scenery for a few seconds before they saw Yin Nuashing striding inside. The empty palace was very spacious. There were no furnishings at all. The hall was empty, and the side hall was clean. If it weren't for the 2 windows hanging on the windowsill, Yin Nuashing would have thought that this was an abandoned building. But seeing that they had fallen for so many years, it was actually reasonable to say that this was an abandoned building. Shaking his head to get rid of the abnormal thoughts in his mind, Yin Nuashing went straight to the deepest part of the palace complex. The main reason was that he felt that he would be crushed to death by some mysterious force if he thought for a while more. Under the guidance of her energy, he passed through one palace after another and came to the last gate. Suddenly, he hesitated. There seemed to be something behind the gate that was tempting him. It was because of this inexplicable feeling that his hasty preparations suddenly collapsed. Still, he didn't dare to open this gate. Chapter 1572. Clang! The door slammed heavily against the wall, and a series of loud echoes reverberated throughout the empty palace and corridors. Yin Nuoxing retracted his foot, which was still kicking out, and took a deep breath. Under the watchful eyes of several people, he broke into the deepest part of the palace complex. Jing Yun and Jing Yuanji looked at each other, shrugged, and followed him in. He was never afraid of this place, because it had something to do with the origin heavenly god. The former was afraid because he was afraid of being tormented. The entire palace was empty. This rather spacious palace was empty, and nothing existed. His eyesight was at its limit. He scanned the palace back and forth dozens of times, but he didn't see anything of value. Well, that wasn't all. In the deepest part of the palace, there was a faint trace of distortion in space. The space twisted into a whirlpool, as if it had been distorted by some kind of power. There's something there. Jingyan pointed forward, because he knew that Yin Nuoxing was afraid of the origin heavenly god. He volunteered to walk in front. At this moment, he walked straight toward the small whirlpool in the deepest part of the palace. Hey, hey! Yin Nuoxing hurriedly shouted, but when he saw that Jing Yun had already walked to the front of the distorted space in just a second or two, he could only grit his teeth and walk to the front with Jing Yuanji. Jing Yun raised his head slightly and looked at the small distorted space 2 meters above the ground. When Yin Nuoxing walked over, he turned around and said, "They probably left something behind. Why don't you come up?" Okay, I'll take a look." As soon as he started speaking, Yin Nuoxing's face turned pale. Before he finished speaking, his face was so pale that it was almost transparent. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. He had seen 2 or 3 inheritors, but he had never seen one as special as Yin Nuoxing. Jing Yun walked forward and reached out his hand to touch the distorted whirlpool. He gently poked his palm into the center of the whirlpool. After feeling around for a while, his expression suddenly changed. He quickly withdrew his hand and stepped back. Oh, something came out. I don't know what it is. For it to be placed in the deepest part of the palace, it shouldn't be something simple. Perhaps. Jing Nuoxing pondered for a moment, but did not come up with an answer. When she looked up, she saw that the vortex had suddenly expanded a little. It changed from its original vertical position to a horizontal position in front of them. As it continued to expand, the various energies in this space also began to move chaotically. After a while, the vortex trembled, and a beam of energy fell straight to the ground. A colorful energy crystal quietly floated in the middle of the beam of light. It vaguely released a breathtaking energy, which surprised the 4 of them and made them take a few steps back. That was the origin energy, which was on the same level as the energy in Yin Nuoxing's body. The energy crystals left behind by the origin heavenly god and the others. Jing Yun's first reaction was to think of the energy inheritance. However, after thinking about it carefully for a while, he shook his head. The energy inheritance had fallen into Yin Nuoxing's hands, so it should have been left in the god realm. In that case, the thing in front of him shouldn't be the energy inheritance. It might be something else. What else? He wasn't too sure. Although he had met the origin heavenly god and the others, he didn't know much about them. The entire palace is empty except for a single energy crystal. Min frowned. She walked forward and reached out her hand, but was blocked by the energy beam. The intensity of the energy feedback made her realize that she wouldn't be able to open it even if she used all her strength. She then turned to Yin Nuoxing and said, "Go. You should be able to use the origin energy without any hindrance." Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Her face was covered in sweat. Jing Yun helplessly shook his head and walked forward. A strange aura spread out from his body. After that, he quickly reached his hand into the light beam and effortlessly grabbed the energy crystal. He pulled it out of the energy beam with a little force. With a hum of energy, the light beam disappeared. The colorful energy crystal emitted a slightly more dazzling light. A clear echo was heard from the energy crystal, echoing in the empty palace. The echo was faint, and it buzzed in the ears of the 4 people. Jing Yun casually looked at the energy crystal and used all kinds of energy to activate it. The colorful light of the crystal changed as he touched it. It turned blue, red, and then green. It felt like a guy with a stomachache. Yin Nuashing and the others said that they couldn't see anything. After a while, Jingyan shook his head at Yin Nuashing and the others. I don't feel anything. The structure of the energy crystal is intact. It's not affected by the outside world or the tide of chaos. However, its function seems to be blank. It's just like an ordinary energy crystal. Well, there's indeed an extraordinary origin energy inside, but it's a one-time use. An energy source? Jing Yuanji couldn't help but smile bitterly. The god of origin wouldn't just leave a small energy source here. There should be other secrets, no? Jingyan shook her head as she listened. I didn't find anything stored inside. Aside from the origin energy that can be used by anyone, this energy crystal, it's just an ordinary energy crystal. It's just that there's origin energy stored inside. Sigh. I thought that I would see something that the god of origin and the others left for their successors. It seems that because it's just a model, they didn't leave anything here. Jingyan sighed and spread his hands. He concluded the thing and shook his head helplessly. Then, he waved his hand and put it in the air. It's better to look around this palace. Maybe we can find something. Well, it's more likely that we won't find anything. That being said, it was rare for them to come to the god of origin's territory. They had to take a stroll around. This was the palace complex at the center of the continent. They really didn't believe that there was an ordinary energy crystal hidden in the deepest palace complex. How could the god of origin, who was an extraordinarily intelligent being, do something so meaningless? Absolutely impossible. However, this palace was really spacious. There wasn't even a visit here. Cough, cough. It seemed like this was really just a model. Perhaps they had once created this model for some purpose, but they had forgotten about it as time passed. There wasn't even a window in this spacious palace, nor were there any pillars. The only thing that existed was the energy crystal that was floating in midair and emitting a colorful light. I think, Jing Yuanji muttered. Mei Mao glanced at Lord Feng. She saw him standing 2 meters away from the energy crystal and staring at it in a daze. His eyes flickered with resistance and curiosity. She couldn't help but walk up and take the energy crystal. Seeing that Lord Feng was still in a daze, she muttered to herself, the god of origin wouldn't do something so meaningless, especially putting it in the deepest part of the palace complex. Even if it's just an ordinary energy crystal, there should be something special about it. She took a deep breath and suddenly took 2 steps forward. When Lord Feng came back to his senses, she pressed the energy crystal against his chest. Then, the colorful energy crystal suddenly brightened at a speed visible to the naked eye, until it was as bright as a star. Yin Nuashing screamed at his heart. My life is over. He looked at Jing Yuanji, who was staring at him with a serious expression. He was about to cry. Girl, you tricked me. You tricked me. Oh. Jing Yuanji was also shocked. She was about to throw the energy crystal away, but before she could do anything, the light released by the origin crystal made them unable to move. The entire palace suddenly emitted an unusually bright energy, which shocked Jing Yun and Min. When they turned their heads, they felt that their entire vision was covered by the light. A strong energy shock flashed past like a storm. The bright light continued to shine for 3 to 4 seconds before slowly dissipating. The 4 of them squinted and opened their eyes bit by bit. Then, they turned pale with fright and said in unison, F***CK. Yin Nuashing held Frost in his left hand and pulled Jing Yuanji with his right hand. He hurriedly retreated a distance and gathered with Jing Yun and Min, staring straight ahead. In the distorted space where the energy crystal was stored, there were more than a dozen white figures standing. They were wearing plain clothes that gave them a luxurious and sacred feeling. But in fact, they could only see white figures. Other than being able to tell that the white figures were different in height and weight, they could not tell anything else. Then, according to the aura that reverberated from the white figures, which seemed to be from the beginning of the Yuan realm, Yin Nuashing felt that there was no need to guess the identity of these figures. They were the group of heavenly gods of origin who had already passed away. Yun Nuoxing's cold sweat dripped from his head to the soles of his feet. He subconsciously made a defensive move. He threw a circle of concealment arrays on the four of them, and then desperately retreated. Jing Yuanji and the others also made a defensive move, but Jing Yun felt that they were making a fuss over nothing. Don't worry, it's just an image. It's fine. To hell with the image. Yin Nuoxing, however, smiled bitterly. They are an image to us at this moment, and we are also an image to them at that time. What do you mean? Jing Yun was stunned for a moment. After a moment, she seemed to understand something. Her face revealed a shocked expression. Could it be they can see us? Yin Nuoxing pushed them out with his strength with a broken face. He recalled the illusion he saw when he touched the divine blood in the world of origin. He saw her last scene, saw her see him, and he suddenly trembled. And they can still affect us at this moment. Let's run quickly, before they come back to their senses. Yin Nuoxing's movements were too loud, and it scared Jing Yun and the others. However, the scene in front of them was indeed very shocking. A white light flashed, and a dozen or so heavenly gods of origin suddenly appeared in front of them. Moreover, all of them seemed to have traveled through time and space to arrive here. Even though they were just shadows, and they were white and blurry, they made Yin Nuoxing and the others feel as if the real person was standing in front of them. Anyone who saw them would probably be instantly vigilant, and their hair would stand on end. Speaking of which, they also saw a white figure on the white platform just now. Did it notice them as well? It was hard to say, but even if there was only a 1/10 chance, Yin Nuoxing did not want to stay for a moment longer. Buzz! A figure suddenly descended from the sky and landed in front of them, causing Yin Nuoxing and the others to scream in pain. They shouted in unison, "Our lives are over!" Then they all took out their weapons and prepared for battle. Then the heavenly god of origin that landed in front of them walked past them as if nothing had happened, as if it did not see them at all. Didn't you say that they can see us? Jingyan scratched her head in confusion. Theoretically, that's right, right? Yin Nuoxing also felt that it was strange. Last time when I came into contact with me, her image, I clearly felt that she had noticed me, and even affected me. Oh! Jingyan fell silent for a moment after hearing this. Then, she tried to explain. Perhaps there are different types of images regarding them? They did not know this. They did not understand at all. They were not people of that era. So how could they know about this kind of thing? Min turned around and looked at the tall, white figure walking into the depths of the palace. Then, she suddenly saw something from the corner of her eyes. She gently raised her head, and her pretty face suddenly stiffened, showing signs of freezing. She hurriedly reached out and tugged on Yin Nuoxing's robe and pointed upwards. Then, all three of them curiously raised their heads, and their faces all turned pale and stiff. There were some tables, chairs, and benches floating in the air of the vast palace, but that was not the main point. The main point was that there were many white figures sitting on these tables and benches. All of them were floating in the air, and they looked a little sloppy and careless. However, their gazes and attention were all focused on the dozen or so people in the depths of the palace. This scene and this atmosphere made it seem as if they were in a meeting. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched violently. Oh my God! More than 100 heavenly god of origin were gathered here for a meeting. Then, were the four of them the intruders? Are these also images included in the reconstruction? Jingyan looked at them and couldn't help but mutter to herself. She observed the white figures with their backs facing them. Those figures, those floating in the air and those standing on the ground, all had their backs facing them, and their attention was focused on one place. Apart from the person who had just landed on the ground, the others would not be able to see them even if they could. As for their characteristics, Jingyan tried very hard to find some. She searched from the corners of their clothes and from the corners of their shadows. However, she could not find anything that resembled the images she had seen. Apart from their auras, she could tell that they were indeed heavenly god of origin, but she could not find anything else to determine which one was which. Let's go and take a look Jingyun said in a small voice. Perhaps there won't be any problems. After saying that, she paid no attention to Yun Nuoxing, whose face was twisted with malevolence, and carefully made her way forward. Yun Nuoxing struggled internally for a while before she walked forward with an even more twisted and malevolent face. The words that came out of her mouth almost caused her soul to leave her body. Let's go and take a look. A series of soft voices echoed in her mind, as if they were communicating with each other. However, she could not understand what they were saying at all. Yun Nuoxing was worried, fearful, and extremely curious. Several emotions battled in her heart, causing her body to tremble incessantly. Her facial expression changed drastically, as if she had experienced the creation of the great Yuan realm. She hesitated for a moment before taking out the Book of Epics. Then, she tossed it to Jingyun and said, "Stuff it into your soul. I'll listen to what they're saying." "Oh, then I don't need to translate." Jingyun nodded when she heard that. She had just been pondering how to translate the conversation between the heavenly god of origin and the others for Yun Nuoxing and the others to hear. As Jingyun stuffed the Book of Epics in her head, Yun Nuoxing and the others held their breaths and focused. The indistinct gibberish in their minds gradually became clear in a few seconds. Gradually, they could understand it. However, what they heard was the meaning of the words. They understood it through Jingyun's translation. It did not mean that they truly understood the original divine language. The distant and ethereal voice slowly rang out in their minds. All the power has been gathered here. It has been condensed into this form according to the instructions. These words came from the depths. Yun Nuoxing and the others all craned their necks. They noticed a figure standing in the innermost area with its back facing them. They could not tell whether it was a man or a woman. Even though it was only a shadow, they could still sense a heavy and relaxed aura from it through time. There was also a supreme dignity. Their emotions were slightly affected because of this. The name. I can't hear it clearly. Jing Yuanji muttered softly. The name of the heavenly god of origin is a taboo. We only call it by its divine title, so we can't hear it, Jing Yun explained in a soft voice. However, is there really a need for this? This level of preparation is not very useful to us, and to them, it's not much of a precaution. A figure leaning against a pillar closest to the palace waved his hand in response. When did that pillar appear there? Min was stunned. In my memories. Shoo, let's not worry about that for now, Jingyun said softly. It's meaningful, or perhaps it's meaningless. Since it's been left behind, it will come in handy one day, even if we're no longer here by then, the dignified figure said softly. It suddenly turned around, giving Yun Nuoxing and the others a fright. Its ethereal voice, mixed with the noise echoing in the void, slowly rang out. What do you think? Below, a similarly white figure raised its head and shrugged casually. They could not see its figure clearly, but the voice that came out of its mouth was female. Who knows? Maybe that day will come, maybe it won't. As far as I'm concerned, it's still very necessary. If we pass away just like that, we won't be left with nothing. Maybe after countless years, there will still be hope for the primordial realm. At the cost of countless years in exchange for a glimmer of hope. The figure beside it could not help but laugh bitterly. It was only now that Yun Nuoxing and the others noticed that other than the dignified figure, there were 3 other people standing in front of and behind the figure. If the dignified figure was a king, then the 3 of them were probably equivalent to great generals. It's already not bad that we can still leave a little bit of hope in this world. I've said before that the lazy order will be coveted by chaos one day. It's just that the time is much earlier than I thought. It said 2 names at once. A series of noises rang out in front of it, making Yun Nuoxing think that the Book of Epics was broken. What's more, their desire for the world of order has never weakened. It has already begun since the beginning of the 33rd era. That desire will only become stronger and stronger. Even if we are no longer around, it will still be the same. It is just their nature. That's right. Some things can't be hoped for more. Hope, so be it. Let's do our job and let the mortals face the rest by themselves. The dignified figure took 2 steps on the spot, and its voice suddenly lost some of its strength. The hoarse voice sounded a little powerless and helpless. This world can't always be guarded by us. This world can't always be bound by us. We should also let go and let the mortals protect this world by themselves. Please don't make a declaration of death before it has even begun. The figure with the female voice standing on the right took a step forward. More or less, we have some confidence in the world of order. Perhaps things are not that bad. Perhaps. The dignified figure shrugged and looked up. How's the preparation over there? Check the situation of our world one last time. If nothing goes wrong, it's almost time for us to set off. The figure above stood up from a chair and descended from midair. It bowed to the 4 people in front of it in a gentlemanly manner. Reporting to you, the worlds we prepared have all been prepared. We can immediately head to the chaotic void. It won't affect the mortal worlds in the void region at all, but a part of it may not be able to be moved away. That part of the worlds had already been affected when we evacuated from the chaotic void the last time. That part hasn't been completely purified yet. Perhaps we can only... I know. Give up. The dignified figure let out a long sigh of relief and shook its head. Try to evacuate all the lives in there, then banish them into the void and destroy them completely. Don't let any power remain in the world of order. Go and take a look at the other primordial realms. Take a look at the situation in the lower realm. Our protection may not be able to completely protect the lower realm. The dignified figure looked at the woman standing on the right and said. She shrugged. Okay. I'll make a trip. During the time I'm away, I'll leave the protection to you. She turned around, and the dozen or so people immediately opened up a path for her. Just as she was about to walk out of the hall, her footsteps suddenly stopped. Her face was blurred by the white haze, but from the position she was standing in, the sudden halt in her footsteps, and the slightly tilted face, her line of sight seemed to have landed on their group of uninvited guests. Yin Nuashing clearly felt that the line of sight had fallen on them. He let out a scream and was about to cry, I told you that there was something wrong with this group of people, but you didn't believe me. Now she's looking at us again. Oh my God. Yin Nuashing broke down and wanted to run away, but he couldn't move at all. Jing Yuanji subconsciously looked behind her, but she saw nothing. No one was standing in their direction. She was indeed looking at this group of people. What's wrong? The dignified voice sounded again. The group of people turned their gazes a little curiously and looked at the empty space. There was a slight change in their gazes. There seems to be something there. Yin Nuashing and the other 3 collectively cried out in their hearts, Oh my God! Haha, it's nothing. This matter is still very far away. It has nothing to do with us. Chapter 1573. The shaking scene seemed to have cut off the continuous axis of time, and the entire space cooled down as a result. Other than Yin Nuashing's changing expression and gloomy muttering, the palace was terrifyingly quiet. About 10 meters in front of them stood a heavenly god of origins. She was about to turn around and leave, but she stopped as if she had noticed something. However, she and the others were just reflections, phantoms. They were as illusory as the bits and pieces of scenes and fragments that had been unintentionally recorded by the rules of the world. Moreover, time had already passed for more than a dozen epochs, and the history of the birth of time should have cut off any connection between then and now. What Yin Nuashing and the others were experiencing right now was this female, heavenly god of origins looking at them and saying those words that cross time and space and cut off the sea of time. The 2 of them were the furthest apart in the great Yuan realm, yet they seemed to be so close that they could touch them if they stretched out their hands. She saw them, and her gaze fell on them accurately. Because of her words, all the heavenly gods of origins in the palace turned their gazes and looked at them. She might have truly seen something, but for the other heavenly gods of origins, they could only feel that the place she was looking at was slightly unusual. Perhaps they could feel a little, but they could not see it clearly. However, in real sight, she at that moment, in the scene, what did she see? Would something be affected because she saw them? Would the future change because of the arrival of the future? It was hard to imagine such a scene, but for them, perhaps it was possible. She was staring at him, watching him muttering in fear and muttering to himself. After a moment of panic, he slowly calmed down and stared at the female heavenly god of origins in front of him. Because they were the most special existences in the great Yuan realm, no one could see their appearance clearly before they personally descended. Right now, he was also unable to make a judgment. He could not see her eyes, but he could vaguely feel that a pair of clear and deep eyes were staring at him. The gaze that had crossed time and space and appeared in this fragment of time, that pair of eyes that contained reality and the myriad phenomena of the void shocked him and made him subconsciously calm down. Although her face was bright white, he seemed to feel that she seemed to have smiled gently and then slowly walked towards them. Gulp! Yin Nuoxing swallowed hard and handed Shuang to Jing Yuanji. Then she quickly pushed them back a little. She braced herself and stood where she was, watching her walk towards him step by step. Step by step, she was less than 2 feet away from him. Suddenly, an ethereal and distant voice that seemed to be disturbed by some kind of obstacle quietly sounded. "Hello, traveler." Yin Nuoxing shuddered violently. Those words were directed at them. He was so scared that his entire body was drenched in sweat. Just as he was planning to turn around and run for his life, she suddenly raised her left hand gently and slowly extended it a certain distance away. Then, she stopped moving in midair, causing him to be stunned for a moment. This action, this expression, this scene, it was as if his eyes became a little empty and he was a little dazed. In a daze, he reached out his right hand and gently touched that slender hand. Hum! A faint hum of energy resounded in his mind. His body suddenly emanated a red-black energy, causing Yin Nuoxing to be startled awake. When he looked at the scene before him again, his mind was instantly covered in cold sweat. It was her. It could only be her. He actually did not think of it. He should have thought of it. After a moment, she withdrew her hand and laughed softly as if she had confirmed something. Then, she turned around and said to the countless other heavenly gods of origin who were looking at her in confusion, "If there's nothing else, I'll be heading out. Look after the home for a while." Oh, that dignified figure was stunned for a moment. Then, as if he had thought of something and did not mind, he smiled faintly and said, "Go. Just don't turn other people's worlds upside down. We have 30,000 years to prepare, but in reality, the war has already begun in these 30,000 years. The attack that originated from has already begun in the void. We have left behind 771 defensive measures. Hopefully, they will not be used one day." He slowly shook his head, and the helplessness and bitterness that had appeared on his body due to his words just now suddenly disappeared. He slowly raised his hand and waved it gently. "No matter what, we only need to continue walking. For order, for the great Yuan realm, and for ourselves, we will definitely win." The other heavenly gods of origin stood up and bowed in all sorts of ways. They spoke in unison, their voices majestic. "Long live order. Victory belongs to us." Accompanied by a soft, buzzing sound of energy, everything fell silent. The images of the heavenly gods of origin all disappeared. Everything that had happened here had completely turned into dust along with the end of the images, except for her. She was still here. Yin Nuoxing did not expect her to be here. She seemed to have left the images and was still slowly walking in the direction of the main door. Slowly, as if she did not care about anything. When she reached the main door, she suddenly murmured softly, "Promising future, victory, and order? But what goes around comes around. 1 year is in charge, and the next year, this void has never completely belonged to order. If we want to maintain order, it's difficult. This future is truly a mess. I can't see any hope." 771 paths, and all of them lead to death. I have to make a choice. I have to make more preparations. I will protect all of this, no matter the cost. Her figure walked out of the main door and dissipated with the wind. This image should have really ended at this moment. Yin Nuoxing thought. He waited for a long time, but did not see anything else. Only then did he heave a heavy sigh of relief. It should be completely over. The energy hovering in the hall quickly dissipated after a few tremors. Only then did Yin Nuoxing notice that a considerable amount of energy had accumulated in the hall when the image appeared and attracted their attention. Now, it was slowly disappearing as the image faded. After a burst of dazzling light drifted away, he discovered that there was still something in the depths of the hall, an energy crystal. It was the same energy crystal just now, but it no longer had the colorful energy. It had turned into a pure reddish-black color, and an infinite amount of destructive energy was surging inside it. He only took a glance at it, and he felt that the energy in his body showed signs of agitation. It was the same energy that came from the same source. It was also the power of destruction, and it was the power of destruction that she had left behind. He did not know if it was any different from the origin energy left behind in the realm of the gods. The origin energy in his body wanted him to come over. Was it because it sensed the aura of this energy crystal? When Jingyun saw that everything had calmed down, she plucked up her courage and stepped forward. She reached out and touched the energy crystal. Then, she turned to Yin Nuoxing and said, "Most of the energy has been consumed. There's only one kind of energy left inside. It seems that the other energies were left behind just to maintain the image just now. Can you see if this thing is still useful?" Jingyun's hand trembled as she threw the dark red energy crystal to Yin Nuoxing. The latter was still a little stunned, but he caught it reflexively. Before he could do anything, and before he could examine it, the energy crystal in his hand suddenly lit up again. Yin Nuoxing was shocked. What is going to happen this time? Jingyun was also shocked. Just when she thought that something was going to appear again, she sensed the presence and movement clearly. Then, she said loudly, "It seems that something is still inside. It might be an image again. Don't worry. Let's see how it is going to activate." Yin Nuoxing's expression slightly stiffened, and he sighed as he accepted his fate. He extended the energy crystal in his hand forward, and as the dark red light suddenly flashed, the white figure that had just disappeared suddenly appeared in his sight again. Seeing that it was her again, Yin Nuoxing's expression couldn't help but slightly tremble, and at this moment, she looked slightly different. The outline of her face couldn't be seen clearly, but he could see her clothes and her long black hair. She was wearing a cold-blooded military uniform, and her face was completely white, but he could feel that she seemed to be a little tired and weak in the bottom of her heart. Recorded time, 28 trillion years have passed. Now, we are in the depths of the void of chaos. We are in a void of chaos that has never been set foot in before. If I'm not wrong, we should start to come into contact with things on the side of chaos. To prevent some irresistible factors from losing this part of the information, we will start recording from now on. She finished this paragraph normally. Then, she paused and stared at them for 2 minutes. In fact, she just stood there for a long time without saying anything. After about 5 minutes, her expression seemed to have changed a little. She suddenly sighed in a more helpless tone. "What should I say? I'm not good at keeping a diary." She suddenly turned around and looked behind her. She opened her mouth and said something that could not be heard clearly. Then, she waved her hand and shook her head. She continued to look ahead and said softly, "Then let's just talk about it. 15 years ago, the power of order entered this area of the chaos void. According to the division of the chaos void, this place should belong to the middle plane. The power of chaos is very strong, but also appears to be too lazy. We carry with us too much order, and they kept quiet about our arrival. It is obvious that there is something unusual about this level of chaos. They seem to have noticed us, but they did not intend to pay any attention to us uninvited guests. According to the survey 2 days ago, the number of exiled worlds in this area is very small, and there is not a trace of order power. After going through 1,127 spatial leaps, we did not find any worlds formed by the order of chaos. It seems that there is no such thing as a world created by the order of chaos. The previous theory seems to be overturned. We can vaguely feel that there is something here. It seems to be some kind of large object that lives in this place and does not move at all. It is as lazy as the order of chaos and does not move at all. We can clearly feel that there is something here. It is a strange energy source that is unintentionally found in the order of chaos. It is unceasingly and endlessly releasing weak energy and information into the chaos void. Just like how our ordinary breathing affects the fragile world, its existence has suppressed this part of the chaos void. So we can feel that the chaos void here is much more dead than the other places. There is no movement. Although there is no way to completely guarantee that there is something here, the existence of an energy source cannot run away. Regardless, we are going on an expedition to the chaos void. We have to check it out. Let's just hope that we don't run into too much trouble. After listening to this, the image suddenly stopped. The image froze at the pose she made when she finished speaking. Yin Nuashing and the other three looked at each other. Yin Nuashing murmured softly, "Some kind of strange existence in the chaos void that has a weak consciousness and can release energy and information. Have you thought of anything?" Jing Yuanji and Min shook their heads. They had not been to the chaos void. Even if they had, they would not have gone so deep. It was about the same as the middle realm of the order void. According to the geographical location of the two voids, it was a place that could only be reached after crossing an entire lower realm. No one in the order world would be so bored as to go deep into the chaos void. Some kind of special existence in the chaos void. Jing Yuanji seemed to have some impression of it. After all, he came from that era. Perhaps he knew some secrets that only the heavenly god of origin and the others knew. So at this moment, he showed a thoughtful expression. After a moment, he frowned and said, "I think I know something. It should have left a deep impression in my heart. But no matter how hard I think, I can't remember it." "Something related to the heavenly god of origin?" Yin Nuashing asked tentatively. Seeing that he nodded, she also nodded and continued. "The chaos void is related to non-order forces?" "Maybe, but it doesn't seem to be that simple." Yin Nuashing tilted his head and continued to guess. Life? Related to life? Non-order life? Chaos life? Non-order life? Or some other weird stuff? Hearing this, Jing Yuanji shook his head hesitantly. After a moment, he nodded. It seemed to be very close to what he said, but there was no way to completely confirm what it was. His heart was also in a mess. Yin Nuashing was about to continue guessing when Min looked at the energy crystal in his hand and said, "There seems to be some energy left. See if there are any other records left behind." This sentence reminded him. Yin Nuashing nodded, and his spirit entered the energy crystal. Without any effort, he found the second diary. After a moment, she, who was dressed in tattered clothes and seemed to have just retreated from the front line after a fierce battle, appeared in his line of sight. She said in a serious tone, "This matter is still going well. According to our previous calculations, we have found an area close to the chaos upper plane. The chaos order here is in an unstable state of self-devouring and self-evolving. It is very different from the chaos void that is relatively stable and no longer evolving." Yin Nuashing suddenly came to a realization. He raised his head and said, "So, this is what they were talking about here just now. They were talking about something that they were going to deal with, right? 771 backup plans or something. They even said to be fully prepared, and that's what it meant." As he said, he looked at Jing Yuanji and said, "Do you remember anything? The origin heavenly god made such a big move. Come to think of it, it was probably something that happened in the 33rd era." Jing Yuanji rubbed his chin and muttered to himself. His body swayed left and right a few times. He hesitated for a while and then paced back and forth on the spot. He lowered his head and thought hard. The 33rd era. The remaining memories tell me that that should be the time when the origin heavenly god and the others regularly went to the chaos void to clean up and expedition. Clean up? Clean up what? Who did the expedition fight with? Yin Nuoxing's eyes flashed. He felt that he had touched upon something incredible. Although he was a little frightened, he could not resist the curiosity in his heart. He could not help but want to know. Jing Yuanji was also stunned by his question. He looked at Yin Nuoxing and the others blankly. No, you don't even know about this? This? Wait a minute, let me ask you first. Now, does the world of order still regularly go to the chaos void to clean up trash? Yin Nuoxing and the others shook their heads and said, No, we don't know about this at all. Jing Yuanji immediately understood the problem. He reached out his hand and patted his forehead. He could not help but smile bitterly. So that's how it is. Our era. Now you guys, so even such things have been forgotten by time. But if that's the case, won't the chaos void endlessly evolve and devour the void of order? How is the chaos void now? Because they were not people of their era and had not experienced something that could be very terrifying and involved a lot of things. Yin Nuoxing could not understand Jing Yuanji's anxiety at all. He tilted his head and replied, The chaos void. It's just the chaos void. It's just standing there, motionless. Motionless. Jing Yuanji's eyes widened in shock. How long has it been going on? Has it always been like this? What about its range? What about its rules? What about its order? Wait a minute, there are too many questions. You need to calm down first. Yin Nuoxing freed a hand and patted Jing Yuanji's shoulder. He took a deep breath and said slowly, More than 10 years have passed. Many things have happened in our era, especially the battle that was at the end of your era. It had a great impact and affected the entire void. So you need to dig out some of your past knowledge of the void and then listen to me slowly. Yin Nuoxing took a deep breath and said softly, The chaos void. I don't know what it was like in your era. Anyway, it has been standing there for the past 11 years. It is cold and motionless. It has not changed for tens of thousands of years. It is not a serious problem for the beings of order to barge into it. It is also a place where some worlds of order drifted across the sea. There are many abandoned worlds of order floating in the shallow layer of the chaos void. They have lost the control of order and are not affected by the chaos void. They have become specimens lying there. Jing Yuanji was stunned again and frowned. The last sentence is a little similar. The chaos void is the final destination for the worlds of order to travel. But it will no longer devour worlds of order. It will no longer decompose the power of order. Yin Nuoxing nodded. What you said has never happened. There is no situation like what you said in our knowledge. So now it is your turn to talk. What do you mean? Jing Yin scratched her head and spoke seriously. In our era, the chaotic void would devour all energies that originated from the worlds of order. It would also continuously strengthen itself and expand its own territory by devouring the power of order. Although in terms of the scale of the void, the mutual devouring of these two behemoths would not affect much, it would definitely affect some of the life forms that lived on the border between the two worlds. Furthermore, if the chaotic void was allowed to devour order without end and expand bit by bit, the gradually increasing pressure would also affect the void of order. That was why the heavenly god of origin and the others would regularly send people to the chaotic void to deal with the infinitely expanding chaotic void and to fight. That was the so-called expedition, which was just a part of the never-ending battle between order and chaos. As for the garbage that I mentioned, Jing Yuanji looked at Yin Nuoxing. It is the three things that you mentioned before. Yin Nuoxing's cheeks twitched. The three sins of the world. I see. The accumulation of these things will greatly affect the order void. So, it needs to be dealt with regularly. Because the primordial god and the others do not exist in this era, too many of these things have accumulated at the bottom of the void. Well, there is indeed such an effect. However, most of it is actually convenient. According to what you said, the void has changed a lot. In the past, the void would adjust itself and deal with these things on its own. Jing Yuanji said as he glanced at Yin Nuoxing. Yin Nuoxing could not help but smile bitterly. So it was the order void that had broken down on its own. Chapter 1574. The brief image revealed a mysterious event that happened in the mythological era. It was a major event that only those who stood at the top of order would know about. The expedition to the Chaos Void, the never-ending war between order and chaos. These are only a small part of the events that happened in the entire Yuan realm, but they were also the most deadly events in this world. Moreover, the Chaos Void in the previous era was obviously different from the Chaos Void in this era. Many aspects were different. In Yun Nuoxing's knowledge, the Chaos Void had never experienced the situation that Jing Yun had described to him. From the looks of it, it was not that the Chaos Void was originally like this, but after the end of the war at the end of the 39th era, the Order Void and the Chaos Void were affected in some way. The overall strength of the Order Void had declined, and the Chaos Void had simply stopped moving as if it was dead. Speaking of this, Yun Nuoxing's heart trembled. He had a small guess that it might have something to do with the Chaos Void. Of course, it could not escape from the Order Void either. Moreover, he had a feeling that he might be able to find the answer to his guess from the image of this energy crystal. There seems to be a lot of energy left. Yun Nuoxing looked at the reddish-black energy crystal in his hand. He suddenly remembered the diary that he and Xian had read together. His expression suddenly became a little strange. He quickly shook his head to get rid of the strange thoughts. He raised the energy crystal in his hand and continued to activate it. Let's continue reading. As the energy flashed, the image moved again. She began to seriously talk about the things that she had recorded. We are now in the upper realm of the Chaos Void, the upper, middle, and lower realms of the Order Void. The size of the upper realm and the lower realms are gradually increasing. The Chaos Void is the complete opposite. The concept of the upper realm is the largest, and the lower realms are gradually decreasing. Currently, we have not found any law that can divide and limit the size of each level in the Chaos Void. We can only judge based on the flow of non-order energy and chaos law. The expedition team is doing well. We have followed the anomaly in the Chaos Void to the upper realm. So far, we have not found the energy source. However, it is obviously nearby. If we go deeper, we will leave the range of our senses. If we go back, the sense of its presence will weaken. It seems to be nearby, but we can't see it or find it. We can only determine where it is by sensing its influence on the Chaos Void and the faint traces of energy it emits. So far, we have not found any signs of life. There is no breath of life. But if it is really a life of the Chaos Plane, we probably can't use the method that we are familiar with to determine it. We need to continue to observe just in case. I have also asked them to make preparations. I hope this trip will be safe. Jing Nuoxing muttered to himself for a while before speaking. About going deep into the Chaos Void. I have a little impression of it, but I can't remember it. I remember that I should still remember. Yun Nuoxing tilted her head and looked at him. Didn't you get hit in the face by the tide of chaos? Didn't you forget all those weird things? That's right. But I remember that I only remembered it after the tide of chaos. How? Jing Nuoxing lowered his head and could not help but mumble. How could I forget it when it happened here? It shouldn't be. I shouldn't have reached the age of forgetfulness, right? Yun Nuoxing and the other two were speechless. No, according to age, you should have. You're all old monsters who have lived for more than 10, 20, or 30 eras. It is normal for you to forget things. Yun Nuoxing continued to activate the energy crystal. Her image flickered for a moment, and she even changed into a new set of clothes. Moreover, she looked a little serious at this moment. Although they could not see her face clearly, it did not prevent them from feeling that she was very serious. Her face was a little gloomy, and they did not know what they had encountered in the chaotic void. The reflection hesitated for a while before speaking slowly. Record, we have reached the center of the energy source point. The energy spreading in all directions in the chaos void is centered here. I can feel that every inch of this place is exuding an unpleasant aura. In this place, chaos, order, and non-order energies are in a mess. Various things with their own rules and orders are entangled here, but they also seem to have a unified order. They are operating according to a common law, just like a kind of origin life that was born in the chaos void. But in theory, the origin life would not be born in the chaos void, and it does not look like a chaos life. Continue to observe. The reflection flickered for a while. She was probably switching to the next image, but this time, the reflection flickered violently. Her figure did not appear, nor was there any scene. Suddenly, a strange sound burst out, followed by all sorts of weird noises. It was as if countless things in the void were being destroyed at the same time. It was a noise that echoed in the void. Is it broken? This thing can be broken? Jingyan was a little taken aback. She walked up and poked at the red-black energy crystal. Then, she frowned after taking a closer look. It's not. Everything is normal. Why is this happening? Yin Nuoxing turned the energy crystal in his hand. His eyes flickered, and the energy in his body flickered as well. If the energy crystal is fine, he suddenly said, it could only be that she is recording these things. This is the next image, the things in front of them all those years ago, the things she recorded all those years ago. Just a noise? It sounds like the sound of countless worlds being destroyed in the void. It also sounds like the energy tide when something with a large capacity dies. Jingyan muttered softly. Just as they were pondering, the reflection flickered again. Then, it returned to normal. She appeared again. Her face was so gloomy that it was a little scary. The background was a scene of the void being dyed red by red-black energy. It was very distorted. Chaos, the chaos void riot. That is not an ordinary energy source. That is not some kind of energy source. Instead, it is another kind of life form that exists in the chaos void. It is very different from all the life forms of order that we know. Her words were short and hurried. After saying this in a hurry, she turned around and disappeared. After a while, the image slowly dissipated, as if she was in a hurry to do something, causing Yin Nuoxing and the others to be stunned. This is probably a fight in the chaos void. Jingyan patted her head with a headache. The chaos void riot. When this heavenly god of origin left this record, she probably took a moment of leisure while she was on an expedition. Then, she would return to the battlefield after a while. She had the time to make a record in the middle of a war. Min was also a little stunned. Of course. Jingyan nodded. I followed the heavenly god of origin on an expedition to the chaos void during the 35th era. At that time, I heard, who was it? I forgot which Empyrean god of origin told me that every expedition to the void of chaos must be recorded in detail. Ah, that's right. I remember there was such an Empyrean god of origin. It had a habit of leaving behind words, images, diaries, and the like. Perhaps it's the one we're seeing now. Who is it? Yin Nuoxing trembled violently. She patted Min on the shoulder and stared at him with her eyes wide open. Which heavenly god of origin is it? What's her name? What's wrong with you? Jingyan was shocked by Min's slightly ferocious appearance. She could not help but smile bitterly. I have already told you, but I have already forgotten. And even if I remember, I can only say their divine title and not their name. Yin Nuoxing was also stunned when she heard that. She realized that she had lost her composure a little. She let go of her hand and took a step back. She frowned and stared at the energy crystal in her hand. What? You are very concerned about the heavenly god of origin who left behind the reflections? Jingyan whispered. Yin Nuoxing's expression became a little complicated. Her pretty face wrinkled into the shape of a bitter gourd. Then, she slowly relaxed. After that, her facial features squeezed together. It was very complicated. It looked like she was changing her face. After a while, he saw that Jingyan's expression had also become strange. Then, he said, she is the one who left behind this energy. She is the owner of this energy. According to what you said, I am probably her successor. But in reality, I don't even know who she is. Jingyan let out a long oh. She finally understood what Min was troubled about. However, the situation in this era was really frustrating. Most of the things in their era had already disappeared. It was very difficult to find anything valuable, even if they wanted to search for it. The successors of this era, if there were other successors, should not know whose power they had inherited. Well, except for this guy in front of her. He was still trying very hard to find it. But whether he could find it or not was another matter. Let's not talk about this anymore. Yin Nuashing shook her head and let out a long sigh. She continued to activate the energy crystal. Let's continue watching. Most of the reflections that followed were battles in the chaotic void. Occasionally, they would see other heavenly gods of origin walking into the reflections. They could also see some strange things in the chaotic void. However, they were usually blurry and could not be seen clearly. It seemed that she had deliberately erased them. She did not want to let the future generations see some of the strange situations in the chaotic void. She had only chosen to leave behind a recording of the reflections. The battles that followed became more and more intense. They were searching for those energy sources and eliminating them one by one. During this time, they seemed to encounter very powerful counterattacks from the chaotic void. However, that was child's play in the face of the first-order power of the Deyuan realm. More than 100 heavenly gods of origin swarmed forward, and there were basically no signs of the chaotic void's resistance. At first, they thought that things would be like this. It should be quite smooth. Theoretically speaking, this should be the case. Could the heavenly gods of origin still have enemies in the Deyuan realm? Thinking of this, Yin Nuashing's heart thumped violently. He suddenly remembered that the heavenly gods of origin were completely wiped out at the end of the previous era. They were killed by a combination of some unknown person and some unknown ghost. As soon as this thought appeared in his mind, his heart turned cold. Suddenly, there was only a series of noises in the reflections. There were no images, only voices. Abnormal situations. There are situations in the chaotic void that we can't easily identify. We're not sure how big of an impact this trip will have on the chaotic void. Maybe we've gotten into trouble. After returning, he's been worried. He's been talking about the war between order and chaos. He might have seen something even more distant. It's just that this war has never stopped. It's a little messy. No matter what, we have to continue moving forward. I hope that the other plans are still developing according to normal circumstances. Maybe he had some expectations. He should have calculated something. Maybe I'm just worrying too much. The recording stopped abruptly, and the reflections disappeared without a trace. No matter how hard he tried, no more reflections came out. The things stored in this energy crystal seemed to have disappeared. It was just that the sudden stop made him feel stunned. The part that was cut off was like a knife cutting into a kidney, but he could not tell which part of the kidney it was. In short, the ending was a little inexplicable. Moreover, there was only a voice recording. It felt a little strange. Yin Nuashing was slightly stunned. He lowered his head and pondered. In the end, he did not see anything that could confirm his thoughts. He thought that he would see things like non-order life in the reflections. In the end, he did not see anything like that. Well, if it ends here, if I'm not wrong, they should have just finished their expedition to the chaotic void. Jingyan stared at the dimming light of the energy crystal and said to Yin Nuashing, "There's only a voice but no reflections. They should be on their way back from the chaotic void. There's no way to leave any reflections. Judging from the voice, it should be the previous one." Yin Nuashing looked down at the reddish-black energy crystal. He watched as its light dimmed little by little. The surface gradually lost its luster. The energy reaction inside was getting lower and dimmer. The color also changed from reddish-black to darker. Huh? Yin Nuashing noticed this reaction and could not help but be stunned. He raised his hand to check the situation of the energy crystal. Suddenly, a strange energy burst out from the inside of the crystal. A dark energy suddenly burst out from the inside of the crystal. They were shocked. This energy, Yin Nuashing and Jingyan were shocked at the same time. They both recognized this energy that suddenly burst out. This dark and deep energy. Quickly throw it away. Jingyan turned pale with fright and hurriedly shouted. Yin Nuashing threw the energy crystal away the moment he shouted the first syllable. He turned around and put up an energy barrier to protect the four of them behind him. There was an explosion, but it actually did not cause that much of a commotion or sound. Suddenly, a surge of reddish-black energy burst out and wrapped around the dark energy that leaked out from the energy crystal. The energy crystal that was sandwiched between the two energies violently trembled. Transparent cracks burst out from the inside of the energy crystal and spread to every corner of the crystal. When the cracks reached the surface, a dazzling energy light suddenly burst out from the cracks, causing them to be shocked. Bang! A clear sound of the crystal shattering echoed in the hall. Yin Nuoxing and the others widened their eyes in shock as they watched the energy crystal shatter into dozens of pieces under the pressure of the energy. The dark energy collapsed in an instant, leaving only the reddish-black energy surging. A moment later, the surging reddish-black energy suddenly soared into the sky and rushed out of the hall with the dozens of pieces. It burst out in dozens of directions and disappeared without a trace. Jingyan looked at this scene and suddenly frowned. His gaze had been following a piece of the energy crystal as it burst out into the distance of this chaotic space. Suddenly, it trembled and disappeared. He could not help but be dumbfounded. He seemed to have thought of something. That thing, I remember what that energy crystal was. Yin Nuoxing, who had just put away the energy barrier, was shocked by this shout. He turned his head and saw the shocked expression on Yin Nuoxing's face. It was as if the origin heavenly god had descended in front of him. He scratched his head in confusion. What is it? Isn't that the energy crystal of the origin heavenly god? Jingyan shook his head vigorously. His gaze really looked as if he had seen a ghost. That's that heavenly god's thing. Yin Nuoxing was stunned for a moment. He thought of something in his mind and subconsciously said, deity position, divinity, or something else. That's not it. Jingyan shook his head. Yin Nuoxing heaved a sigh of relief. He was really afraid that it would be something of hers, and then she would ask him to do this and that. Just that he had to do something. He thought that it was really what he had said. Was that enough? But why did Jingyan's expression become more and more strange? Could it be that he had thought of something wrong again? The origin heavenly god and the other's divinity carrier. That's right, it's about the same as the divinity carrier I told you about. The one that you blew up was just condensed by them. No matter what it used to be, it was condensed into a small crystal in the end. It contained everything that belonged to them, Jingyan said in a deep voice. Yin Nuoxing blinked his eyes. His breathing stagnated for a moment. He felt dizzy and the ball of light in his heart trembled. He almost fainted. This is what the origin heavenly god that I met once told me. Jingyan couldn't help but smile bitterly when she saw how he fainted and how the two girls hurriedly caught him. The appearance of the origin heavenly god in her memory had become very blurry. She only remembered that he had once existed. His voice and appearance had all become a blurry ball of light. She didn't know if it was because of the chaos tide or she was thinking too far ahead. The origin heavenly god and the other's divinity carriers. To put it in a small way, this is to choose a successor. To put it in a big way, this will allow another origin heavenly god to appear in the future to join them. However, there has never been any rumor in the world of order that anyone had obtained this. Jingyan tried hard to recall. She pieced together the fragments of her memory and said with her own imagination, I think it was said that there was no need for that or anything. Furthermore, this thing would not be easily given to anyone, so such a thing had never happened. If it did, the entire void would know about it. He paused for a moment, then continued, Of course, it doesn't mean that someone has really become one of them. It's just that we don't know about it. Jing Yuanji couldn't help but ask, How many origin heavenly gods are there? 100 or 200? Jing Yun shrugged. I only remember the approximate number. I can't be completely sure that there are only that many. However, that origin heavenly god of mine said that there are indeed only that many people. Yin Nuoxing slowly regained his senses and stood up. He calmly waved his bangs and said calmly, It has nothing to do with me. Yes, that's right. Even if there was something, it has already exploded. Min asked, But why did it shatter? It was that energy that caused it. Jing Yun spoke softly and turned her gaze towards Yin Nuoxing. That black energy, it belongs to what is it again? I've told you before that you have that power of non-order as well. You should know a little about it, right? Yes, the origin heavenly god and the others, except for that. Yin Nuashing scratched his head. Then I really don't know. The energy of annihilation. I was accidentally tormented by it once. Its energy imprint was left in this body of mine. That's why I can use that energy. However, I'm not too sure about its source. I've already told you what I know. Jing Yin felt a slight headache when she heard that. That's really troublesome. That energy was left in that origin heavenly God's divinity carrier. Perhaps it was tainted later on, or perhaps. I can't say for sure. However, even if this thing shatters, it's not really useless. Jing Yun's gaze was intentionally or unintentionally glancing towards Yin Nuashing. He suddenly laughed softly. Theoretically speaking, this thing would not be completely destroyed. It's just that it's now broken into pieces and gone somewhere unknown. However, if all the pieces are recovered, it can actually be restored to its original state. Stop! Yin Nuashing shuddered violently for a moment. She stepped back with all her might. She pointed a finger at Jing Yun and shouted, "Stop that dangerous thought of yours. I'm telling you, I will never look for that thing. Damn it, don't look at me like that. Even if I have some weird karmic connection with her, I won't go any further. What is it?" She stepped on something as she stepped back. Yin Nuashing lowered her head to pick up the thing that she stepped on. However, before she could straighten her back, she froze. What she was holding in her hand was a fist-sized, reddish-black energy crystal. The cracks on the edge of the crystal were still very fresh. Yin Nuashing's breathing stagnated once again. She fell forward before she could straighten her back. Jing Yuanji and Min were so shocked that they quickly rushed over. Jingyan did not know whether to laugh or cry. Hey, the Chosen One was so scared by the origin heavenly god that she fainted or something. She's probably the only one in the entire world of order. Chapter 1575. Sometimes it was hard to imagine how big a joke this bullsh asterisk T reality could be. It could be as small as drinking cold water and stuffing one's teeth. It could be as big as it wanted. Every time a joke was exposed and pressed on one's face. When you answered softly in the spiritual world. The little angel pointed to the sky and said, "Just like little stars now." Everyone was silent for a moment. They looked at each other and tacitly chose not to talk about it. That guy had been provoked enough today. There was no need to provoke him further, although they did not want to talk about it. Feng Xingwang could not help but mutter, if things did not happen dramatically, he would not be Little Star. Everyone nodded in agreement. Yin Nuashing slowly woke up and looked around in a daze. He saw Jing Yuanji squatting in front of him and looking at him with concern. He was a little confused for a moment. It seemed that the stimulation was too strong and he could not accept it. Then his soul slapped him and forced him to faint. So, what happened before he fainted? Yin Nuashing scratched his head. He felt that he was holding something in his right hand. He lowered his head and quickly exclaimed, "Lord Feng, don't." What he saw was a fist-sized energy crystal shard. It shone with a faint red and black light. The cracks on the edge of the shard were still quite fresh. He might be able to remove the shard with his hand. He just glanced at it and his eyes rolled back. He almost fainted again. After calming himself down for 5 minutes, Yin Nuashing stood up and sighed heavily. "So, is this the meaning of that?" Jing Yuanji looked at him and shrugged. "It's a blessing, not a curse. It's something left by the god of origin who chose you. It's naturally beneficial to you. Don't worry and keep it." He walked forward and patted Yin Nuashing on the shoulder. "Maybe some things are just as you said. They were destined from the beginning. Just like you said before, they saw us when we came here. You even had contact with the phantom of the god of origin, didn't you? Maybe it's because you're a successor she recognized you. Now that we're in the future, we might accidentally trigger some of the things that they have arranged." Yin Nuashing looked haggard at the guy who was talking like it was easy for him to do so. She sighed in distress. "It's only because you haven't encountered such a thing that you can sigh like this. It's not a small matter like scheming. It's like seeing a ghost. It's like seeing a ghost. The biggest mistake in my life might be going to that damn place and getting possessed by a ghost." Whoa. Cough, cough. Looking at the guy, crying and coughing, Jing Yuanji and the other two suddenly felt a little heartache. They looked at each other and could not help but smile bitterly. Please don't make such sounds as if you're being raped when you're eating. Jing Yuanji and Min looked at each other, and then looked at Yin Nuoxing, who was almost choked by the energy crystal. The two women sighed. God knows why this guy would automatically lose his mind when he comes into contact with the origin heavenly God. Looking at him being rubbed in the air, he did not look like he was on the battlefield. I have a feeling. Jing Yuanji hugged Frost tightly. After a moment of silence, she said thoughtfully, "In the past, I heard Lord Feng talk about the karma between him and the origin heavenly God. Because of that, he encountered many things. Until today, he still could not get rid of the many things that she arranged. Could it be that today, Lord Feng and her meeting across time and space began? The possibility is very high, but I'm more concerned about another thing." Min crossed his arms and said calmly, "Can the origin heavenly God really do something to this extent? Does this count as changing the past because of the future? But to high-level existences, this is just nonsense. Because what the origin heavenly God and the others changed was not their future." Jing Yin was walking back with Yin Nuoxing under her armpits. When she heard Min's words, she replied, "The relationship between the inheritors and the origin heavenly God is quite complicated. It is indestructible and can cross the barrier of time and space. As long as both have the same intention and awareness, the origin heavenly God would not change anything just because she saw her inheritors inadvertently appear in her vision in the future. Because they themselves are not sure whether the vision at this moment is already part of the fixed future or some other situation, they would not deliberately change anything. At most, they would be like this guy. The changes that they made were all accepted by him, the inheritor." Jing Yun's footsteps paused slightly. There was a thoughtful look on her face. After a moment, she nodded and said, "Well, that's the general idea." Jing Yuanji and Mei Mao were speechless. This guy's memory was blurred by the tide of chaos. Who knows which part of what he recalled was said by the origin heavenly God himself, and which part was made up by his own imagination. Ahem. Anyway, Jing Yin was a little embarrassed by the two girls' stares. She laughed awkwardly and said seriously, "If the origin heavenly God and the others had really set something up for their inheritors, it would not be harmful. With their foresight that could predict the destruction of the void, some careless little arrangements might not affect the present. It could affect the situation hundreds of reincarnations later, or dozens, or even hundreds of years later. In the end, what is the purpose of all these?" Mei Mao and Jing Yuanji's eyes flickered. They looked worriedly at Yin Nuoxing, who had an abnormal expression on her face. They such beings. What is the purpose of all these arrangements? The war between order and chaos. Jing Yun's expression became very serious all of a sudden. She looked as if she was about to sacrifice herself for order. No matter what they set up, no matter what they did, all of their purpose and everything in the end, there's only one purpose, only one purpose. Right now, in my hasty observation, the balance between order and chaos in this era has been severely damaged. Based on what you've told me, I can roughly deduce that the world of order has once again sunk into this eternal war. This is the biggest wave that has splashed in the recent few eras, just like the war in our era. Order will never be a stable order, and chaos will never be the same. No one can say for sure who will win, and who will be the master of the void. It's just a never-ending war. Jing Yuanji and Mei Mao's eyes flickered. Their enemies? What did they encounter during that trip to the void of chaos? 33 years of time made people suspect that the expedition might have something to do with the war that involved the entire Great Yuan realm. However, this was only their conjecture. As for the truth, they could only go to the Yunhua planet to find out. When the little angel heard these words in the spiritual world, her expression suddenly froze, and her wings stopped. When they said this, she immediately thought of more things. The side that crossed time and space, the world of origin, the mark of origin, the core of her divine right, all the way to the 139th era. These things seemed to be linked together, and the order was not according to time. According to the time when she and Yin Nuashing met, they should have met in the world of origin. However, to her, at this moment, this was the place where they met. Everything that she had set up, everything that she had arranged. To him, there was also a sequence. The little angel looked up at the sky of the spiritual world, and her eyes were a little dull. The arrangements of the heavenly god of origin sounded like a series of methods that they had prepared to save and protect the world of order when they knew that it would be defeated. The 771 paths were like that, and so were her arrangements. Many of these backup paths and methods might have been lost in time, and most of them might have failed. Collecting all the failures, they would work together to maintain the fragile balance between the void of order and the void of chaos. There were also many other actions that they did not know about. She had a feeling that even the current situation in the void of order, was created by them. It is just as Little Star said, just thinking about things that involve the heavenly god of origin makes my brain burn. She waved her hand and swept away all these complicated thoughts. The little angel sighed softly and summarized all these things into one sentence, which was, order and chaos would not rest until one of them was dead. Since the birth of the great Yuan realm, small characters like them shouldn't think too much about it. They should just go with the flow and wander around the world of order. Those who needed to fight would fight, and those who needed to cause trouble would cause trouble. As for the more important matters, they should let the undead slowly control them. After all, there were probably not many people in the world of order who had complete control over their own fate. It was just that no one knew about it. Yin Nuashing rubbed his throat with a face full of hidden bitterness. Just now, such a huge thing had directly entered his throat. Now, he couldn't find the existence of that thing in his body, which made him very worried. As he thought about it, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh. Until now, he still hadn't been able to uncover his own secret. The fact that the meeting of the heavenly god of origin was inescapable. However, when did he become an inheritor was really hard to say. He wasn't sure if it was really when he was in the world of origin, or if it was even earlier than that, like the observer or something. It's so messy. Is my soul okay? The little angel heard him and looked up at the heartless CU and the other girls. She whispered back, it's okay. The fragment has hidden itself in your soul. You may need to collect all the fragments before you can see it again. It's very stressful. Yin Nuashing sighed softly. I really want to drag her out and confront her face to face. I want to make things clear once and for all. After that, I don't have to live my life trembling every day. The little angel could not help but smile bitterly. I don't see you trembling every day. Why? Are you afraid that she will come to you one day? I'm afraid that she will ask me to do something even more terrible. Yin Nuashing rolled his eyes and said, I'm not the primordial god. Even if I'm the inheritor and have her divine carrier, I'm just a reserve. Why do I have to push myself to death for these things? Sooner or later, I'll play myself to death. Listening to his nagging, the little angel shrugged helplessly. This guy was also a man of his words. He had no choice. On one hand, he was afraid to touch them. On the other hand, he was crying and weeping as he endured everything related to them. It was because he really needed that power right now. The energy reaction of the primordial god in this chaotic dimension had dropped to the lowest level. As the fragments left, the dimension was completely silent. The broken things in the chaotic dimension were no longer floating around. When they first landed on the continent, Yin Nuashing was worried that those things would fall like meteors. What should we do with this place? Burn it out? Or? Yin Nuashing tilted his head and looked at Jingyan. The most troublesome thing now was this continent in the chaotic dimension. When they came out of the palace complex, they had discussed for a long time, but still could not come up with a unified plan. This was the most significant trace left behind by that era. The other traces may be small scratches, but this was a trace comparable to a big crack in the void. It was obviously not a good idea to leave it here. The ruins may exist for a long time, but they could not just come here for no reason. Well, after all, this was the biggest relic, right? If he studied it, he might be able to find out something about the primordial god of origins and figure out his future path. After all, he could not pretend that nothing had happened after he had eaten a broken divine carrier. Even though he was very reluctant in his heart, as this thing might affect his future path, if he could ascend to the primeval realm, then this little bit of resentment could be ignored. Bring it out. How do we bring it out? Jing Yun and Yun Nuoxing floated in the air and looked down at the continent. They also felt distressed. Of course we have to bring it out, but it exists in this chaotic dimension. Oh, I can't think of a way. Why don't you think about it? It carries dozens of origin energy. There should be a way, right? Yin Nuoxing's cheeks trembled. There's a voice in the underworld, told me how to deal with it, but Jing Yun slapped him. No buts. Hurry up. After the divine carrier left, I can feel that this chaotic dimension is not as stable as we thought. It will collapse at any time. Let's hurry up and get out of here. Yin Nuoxing's face began to twist again. He put on a ferocious expression for a moment. Then he smiled bitterly and nodded. Okay, I'm just a little worried. If I carry this thing with me, I have a feeling that it will explode on my body in the next second and set off fireworks in the void. Okay, hurry up and go. Jingyan glanced at him grumpily. Yin Nuoxing reluctantly turned around. His black eyes surged with many colors of energy. He stared at the continent, and his gaze became incomparably deep. There was a faint aura leaking from his body, and Jing Yun and the others trembled. But when they rubbed their eyes and looked carefully, it seemed that there was no change. It was just a pair of colorful eyes, so calm and indifferent that no one could tell that he was just making a fuss. There was also a sense of calmness. Don't stare at his eyes. The moment the origin energy is activated, you will be trapped. Jing Yin reminded Jing Yuanji and Min in a low voice. Jing Yuanji's body trembled slightly. She blinked and retracted her gaze. When she involuntarily looked at the pair of colorful eyes just now, it was as if she saw the entire Yuan realm in them. She could vaguely feel that he was using the origin energy to observe this world, this Yuan realm. But perhaps because he did not control it well, he saw too far. After a while, he could only see the continent below, a continent that contained countless secrets. Even if his eyes could see it clearly, there was no way for him to see through it. Origin energy, Min reminded her in a low voice. Jing Yuanji woke up again and took a step back. She no longer looked at Lord Feng's eyes like a newborn. She could feel the movement of the origin energy. Even this chaotic dimension was filled with the aura of dozens of origin energies. After a while, he gently closed his eyes. After a few seconds, he opened them again. Then, he gently blinked. The entire continent suddenly disappeared from their sight. My brain is bloated. The pervasive origin energy disappeared completely in an instant. Yin Nuoxing rubbed his head. It's still a bit strenuous to mobilize dozens of origin energies at once. Jingyan looked at him up and down. Suddenly, she said, "Put it into the divinity carrier. Only her divinity carrier can preserve this continent. If it was something else, it wouldn't be able to withstand its capacity." Yin Nuoxing grimaced. That thing was lurking in his soul. So in essence, he had put the continent into his soul. But it can't be kept in there for a long time. The divinity carrier is fragmented. I'm worried that it will be affected if it's kept in there for a long time. Don't worry. The shelf life of the heavenly god of origins things is guaranteed. Jingyan gave him a thumbs up and grinned. If you're really worried, go and take back the fragments of the divinity carrier. It's killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Let me think about it for 2 days. Yin Nuoxing smiled bitterly. Chapter 1576. He would have to leave the matter of that continent for another time. Speaking of which, he seemed to have picked up a lot of things in the void and did not have the time to care about them. It seemed that this bastard had another talent, which was to pick up trash all over the void. There was no telling how much trouble he brought upon himself by picking up random things. I'll just keep it. I can only look at it when the time comes. I don't have that much free time now, so I can only push things back one by one until I have time to deal with them. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh. The continent of origin, can only be brought back first. If the underworld did not do anything, then I'll search it from the beginning to the end. His expression suddenly became ferocious and strange. After all, it was left behind by the god of origin. I've already tangled with them to this extent. How can I just ignore it? I just hope that this continent can reveal some things, some secrets, so that I don't have to live every day trembling. Sai, I'm so scared. But what was the use of being scared? He could only take one step at a time. Initiative and whatnot had nothing to do with him. It was all them. She held the initiative and calculated everything, and there was no telling how she would torment him in the end. After leaving the chaotic dimension, Yin Nuashing and the others appeared in a starry sky. They looked at the scene in front of them, and then turned to look behind them. More than 10,000 miles away, the black that led to the chaotic dimension was shrinking little by little. The diamond-shaped thing at the center was also slowly disintegrating and disappearing into the dimension. That dimension was collapsing and gradually returning to nothingness. With the disappearance of the continent of origin and her divinity carrier, there was no longer any meaning for that dimension to remain. One of the ruins has disappeared. Jingyan took a deep breath and let out a long sigh. There is one less trace of them in this world. Will everything they left behind gradually disappear? Yin Nuashing nodded gently. Yes, but no matter how time changes, there is a ruin that will never disappear. Even if the void has been destroyed, it will still exist in this world forever. Jingyan was stunned for a moment. She glanced at him and understood something. The existence of the deity realm and the great origin realm was a miracle left behind by them in this world. It wouldn't disappear so easily. Yin Nuashing turned his head to look at the spatial entrance that had shrunk by 10 times in the blink of an eye. Suddenly, he said, "Do you think that chaotic space is one of the 771 escape routes they left behind? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't." Jingyan waited until the space had completely disappeared before she let out a long sigh and shrugged. Who knows? The thoughts of those existences are not something that we can casually guess. That's true. Yin Nuashing smiled silently and turned back along the way. Let's go. It's time to go out. There's probably nothing left in this space. Just as they turned around and were about to leave, they saw some movement in the space, which stunned the four of them. After a while, a crack appeared in the space, and 2 figures rolled out of the crack in the space, looking a little embarrassed. After getting up in the starry sky, they patted their old waists. One of them was Mo-he, and the other was the leader of the divine court who had followed them all the way. The 2 of them cursed and looked at the crack in the space. After a while, they felt some movement and turned around together. 6 pairs of eyes stared at each other, and time froze in an instant. Have we caught up? When Mo-he saw Yin Nuashing, he was as excited as a starving guy who hadn't eaten for hundreds of years and sought a table of Manchu Han imperial feast. He hurriedly rushed over. "Why are you here? Is this the end?" "Probably it's the end." Looking at the 2 of them who were as embarrassed as beggars, Yin Nuashing's cheeks twitched. "Why are you guys so embarrassed? We squeezed through space layer by layer. How can we not be embarrassed?" The leader of the divine court grinned. "We're about to fall apart. I've never seen a space barrier that's so thick in my life. No, we left the door open especially for you guys to follow us, but you guys still dug holes in the space barrier yourselves?" "What? You left the door open? Where's the door?" The 3 of them stared at each other. Jing-yun and the others slapped their faces and couldn't look at them at all. Why did they have to dig holes when there was a door? No wonder they were in such a sorry state. They must have encountered an energy riot of some unknown level when they were digging holes. Judging from the nature of the conflict between 4th rank and sequence in this space, it was a miracle that they didn't kill themselves. All right, let's not talk about anything else for now. Since you guys are really so bold and stubborn to come here, then according to our agreement, there are some things that I do need to inform you about. Yin Nuashing let out a long sigh of relief and reached out to pat their shoulders. But I have to remind you that after you hear about these things, you'll be half forced to join us. When the time comes, there will be a lot of things to do. I'll confirm it one last time. It's not too late to back out now. Wait. The leader of the divine court raised his hand. Tell me about the nature of the matter first. Make it simple. Yin Nuashing reached out and twirled her long hair. After thinking for a while, she said, "It's something that concerns your lives." Then, there's nothing to hesitate about. Emohi tidied his robe and tried to put on a serious expression, but the dust on his face affected his expression too much. No matter how he looked at it, he looked comical. Tell us, we're ready. There's no going back on your word. Emohi grinned. Be a man and be quick about it. Yin Nuashing was speechless. Fine, this was the second time today that her gender had been questioned. Yin Nuashing sighed softly and reached out both hands to pat their foreheads lightly. Emohi and Yin Nuashing's expressions stiffened instantly. Their eyes rolled back, and they fainted right away. Then, faint energy emerged from their bodies. The energy solidified into crystals and quickly wrapped the two of them up like two large dumplings. These two unlucky fellows really have the courage to come in here. They've already been corroded to such a state by the fourth rank. If I don't deal with them, who knows what they'll become? Yin Nuashing patted the two large crystal dumplings and rolled her eyes. Commendable courage. Bold but not wise. An independent order like the fourth rank was never even mentioned in the past. There are only a handful of life forms in the 8 elements realm who can clearly sense and locate this order, said Jing Yin Nuashing. He walked forward and looked at the two dark, red energy crystals. But are you using origin energy to distort and forcibly solidify the order? You can say that. I don't have much contact with the fourth rank, so I came up with this idea on the spot. It shouldn't be a problem to protect them. Yin Nuashing spread her hands and said, Anyway, let's leave first. I don't want to stay in this sequence space if there's nothing else. If we calculate the time, it should be about time, right? Gu Zhoming responded spiritually. We'll be there in 3 days at most. If we leave early, we won't run into any trouble later. Yin Nuashing said, Did you find what you wanted in the war ruins? If not, you can walk around. There's still 3 days left anyway. There will always be gains. We need some time to digest them slowly. We've achieved our goal on this trip, said Ning Fei. All right then, let's get out of here. There's still some things that need to be done, so we won't stay here any longer. Jingyan nodded in agreement. They also needed some time to familiarize themselves with the sequence world at this moment. Naturally, they cannot waste too much time here. As the group walked back, the crystals that Mo, He, and Yu Wehan had transformed into cracked at some point. The two of them, who had been tossed around in this fourth-rank space, rolled out of the crystals. Their eyes met, and they widened their eyes in confusion. Oh, you're done. How do you feel? Yin Nuashing waved her hand and pulled the two of them up, asking with a faint smile. Not too good. Emohi grimaced and stood up straight, trembling. He shook his head, trying to get rid of the chattering in his head. A lot of complicated information flooded his brain directly, affecting his spirit and causing him to tremble. Speaking of which, this is too much. Ugh, it's so complicated. Ugh. Yin Nuashing said, You'd better wait until you've recovered. It sounds like you've been electrocuted. Emohi trembled for a while, tidied up those things, closed his eyes to rest for a while, and then smiled bitterly. My mind is a mess, but at least I've tidied up those things. I didn't expect so many things to happen in this world that we don't know about. So, did you come to this void area to take this area to your side? We did have that idea, but it was an idea that came to us by accident after we came here. TSK, the sequence power of the entire void area. How could they let you sit here and do nothing? You're really straightforward. Emohi smiled bitterly and looked at the God's Court leader. Both of them saw the complicated emotions in each other's eyes. What should we do? Tell everyone in this void area about this? If you're not afraid of causing panic, you can just tell them. Yin Nuashing glanced at him and pinched his bangs. Actually, I don't have a good idea yet. Originally, I planned to bring this void territory over and let all the living beings in this area face the terror of the void territory. It's just that I accidentally talked to you, so naturally, I have to think of a better idea. That's easy to say. The God's Court leader suddenly spoke. Everyone looked at him, wanting to hear his brilliant opinion. Our void area is basically ruled by a few of our forces. As long as you call the others over, with your power, you'll naturally have a way to solve everything. Yin Nuashing rolled her eyes. It was a very straightforward method, so straightforward that it was impeccable. It was just that this method was a bit like a hooligan. TSK, but in this situation, it didn't matter if it was a hooligan or not. Efficiency was the most important thing, and the process could be ignored. In short, they just needed to lure people over. For this, it wouldn't be a problem even if they had to use some despicable means. Then it's settled. You'll be in charge of calling people over, and I'll be in charge of beating them up. Yin Nuashing crossed her arms and nodded vigorously. Emohi and Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. Although that was what they meant, they still wanted to talk nicely if possible, but they didn't expect that she would talk on the premise of beating people up. Jing Yun led the way in front for a long time and suddenly stopped. She frowned and looked at Yin Nuashing. That's strange. Did you find anything wrong? I was talking just now and didn't notice. What's wrong? Yin Nuashing shook her head and looked up at the starry sky in front of her. We've circled this place dozens of times, but we couldn't find the door. The door was open when we came, Jingyan said softly. She raised her finger and pointed in front of her. It's about here, but it's gone. Yin Nuashing was stunned for a moment, and she began to break out in cold sweat at a speed visible to the naked eye. In the dazzling starry sky, there were materialized light spots and huge black shadows floating. It was silent, and nothing unusual could be seen. The fourth-rank power also lay dormant quietly, without any movement. It was this strange silence that made Yin Nuashing and the others feel that something was wrong. The little angel glanced outside and could not help but ask, "Are you acting up again?" No, that can't be. The after effects haven't disappeared yet. How can I still do it? Yin Nuashing smiled bitterly. Even if it was something decided by the will of the Deyuan realm, it would not trigger a second time so quickly. They had just escaped from the evil clutches of the Origin, and they were still in a state of shock. The spatial barrier can't be opened. Jingyan frowned, puzzled. She tilted her head and looked at Emohi and Frost. Which part of the spatial barrier did you break in from? We just found a slightly weaker spot and opened it. There's nothing special about it. It can't be opened? Emohi tried to touch the spatial barrier, but he encountered the same situation as Jingyan. There was no way to touch the barrier. Yin Nuashing stared at the starry sky with a deep gaze, sweeping across the dazzling star clusters one by one. The Origin energy surged into his eyes. He suddenly narrowed his eyes, waved his hand, and walked forward. Let's go. It's not over yet. The matter in this space is not over yet. Jing Yuanji hugged Frost tightly and followed his footsteps. She whispered, "It's not over yet. Haven't we reached the deepest part of space?" It seems so. Yin Nuashing stopped and pointed forward. There's a circular star there. Can you see it? Your question is too difficult. There are probably many of them in the entire starry sky. Jingyan smiled bitterly. Yin Nuashing shook his head. It has the aura of the Origin energy. Everyone was stunned. Their eyes looked at the direction he pointed at just now. Their souls spread out, and they frowned with a troubled look. Yin Nuashing also understood when he saw that. He did not say anything and walked straight ahead. After passing through the layers of galaxies and star clusters, the light they came into contact with became more and more ancient. There were even a few faint rays of light that directly shone on their bodies. They carried the aura of eternity, originating from the starlight of countless years ago. It was only at this moment that they landed on their bodies, crossing through countless galaxies to arrive here. The star that emitted that ray of light was as ancient as the starry sky. We're close to the most ancient region in the starry sky. Jing-Yun checked the situation around them. Her eyes flickered slightly. The star and the laws are gradually showing faint changes. It's not quite the same as what we saw before. It's as if there's some kind of origin energy with powerful energy here. It's affecting the surrounding situation and even the void here. Origin energy, Yin Nuoshing repeated. His cheeks twitched violently. They could not be so unlucky as to run into the origin energy that they saw before, could they? No, this is not the chaotic void. Don't scare yourself. He looked at the golden circular star and could not help but feel a little strange. This kind of plot where they thought they had completed the mission, turned around and ran, only to find that they had only completed one stage of the mission, and the second stage pointed to a deeper place. Why did it feel so familiar? And running back and forth felt a little stupid. But he did not expect such a thing to happen midway. The aura of the origin energy. I didn't expect there to be the aura of the origin energy here. I really didn't feel it just now. Jingyan took a deep breath and could not help but sigh. She looked at Yin Nuoshing and suddenly said, jokingly, "You could find it from so far away. Looks like it's looking for you again." Yin Nuoshing, who had been walking well, almost fell into another part of the starry sky when Jing Yun said that. He looked at Jing Yun, who was looking at him with a teasing gaze, and shook his head vigorously. Don't think about it. There's no such thing as good things. How can there be such things appearing one after another? I'll bet a son that it's not her who left this thing. Her? Oh, you're talking about the origin heavenly God who chose you, right? Jing Yun made no sound. What I meant was that this has something to do with your origin energy. I didn't expect you to think of her directly. Hee, it seems that you're still thinking of that origin heavenly God, even though you're full of complaints. Thinking? Yin Nuoshing shuddered violently and shook his head vigorously. How could I possibly think of? Ugh. He stuttered for a while, but before he could finish, he shut up and walked forward with a gloomy face. Looking at his back, he looked as if he had aged dozens of eras in an instant. Everyone didn't know whether to laugh or cry. What a proud fellow. Going deep into the earliest space of the starry sky, the scene of bright stars had become a thing of the past. However, this place was a little different from the wasteland where that space was located. That place was empty, as if no stars had ever set foot on it. At the place where they were now standing, the stars had already burned out, leaving only a deathly gray emptiness. Only 2 or 3 dim stars hung in the corner, hardly attracting anyone's attention, as if symbolizing the end of every starry sky. After the starry scene faded away, Jing Yun and the others finally saw the ring-shaped star that Yin Nuoshing had mentioned. With their current vision, they could see the existence of that thing with the naked eye. It was really a ring-shaped star with a hollowed-out part in the middle, standing billions of miles ahead in a state that defied all laws and order. Its light was not particularly bright in the background of the starry sky. There really is a star that looks like this. Jing Yuanji looked at the golden ring-shaped star and was a little stunned. Can the power of the laws be twisted into such an artistic appearance? Yin Nuoshing stared at the center of the star, her eyes surging with colorful energy. In the middle, there is something there. Everyone turned their eyes, but before they could take a closer look, Emohi screamed. The leader of a divine court was also stunned. The former couldn't help but whisper, "This is the fragment we saw at that time." Yin Nuoshing stopped in his tracks and stared at the center of the ring. It was a fragmented object with an unknown texture. Its surface was filled with traces of being torn from something. It was no wonder that Emohi and the others thought that it was a fragment, but the fragment itself might be as big as a small sun, and it had the aura of origin energy. What was it torn from? How big was it? Yin Nuoshing took 2 steps forward. Suddenly, her face froze and she sweated profusely. Why is it really her aura? Uff. Jing Yin couldn't help but burst out laughing. He patted Yin Nuoshing on the shoulder and said, "A star. What are you going to do with it? Are you going to eat it or—" No. Wait a minute." Yin Nuoshing blushed and quickly waved her hand. "It's not just her aura. There's also the aura of other origin energy and the aura of origin, the aura of the laws. As she spoke, she was shocked. The aura of the laws of origin. This thing could not be preserved by the origin energy. At the bottom of the divine realm, only the places where the origin energy spirits were had the origin law. Even in the broken world of origin, there was no aura of the laws left. Why could it be seen on a fragment here? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.